fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of March.
This is Breakfast with Patrick Christys and Emily Carver.
Well, just a day after the Prime Minister's threat to democracy warning, pro-Palestinian protesters have taken to the streets again as senior MPs raise the alarm over rising extremism.
Jeremy Hunt set to go to war over woke Whitehall waste as he continues to tease the prospect of tax cuts in Wednesday's budget.
A record-breaking Brit Awards singer Ray, me neither, takes 6 gongs and Kylie Minogue is crowned a global icon.
And amid a cost of living crisis, the price of rail fares rises yet again today. Find out how much more you'll be paying.
Oh, grief. Well, after holding the fort over the past few weeks, Queen Camilla is set to take a little break. So who's going to be leading the royals and where's she jetting off to?
And later on at 7:20, £10,000 for turning 30 years old. We'll be debating a new proposal for a citizen's inheritance. We've just missed it.
We've just missed it, yes.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Anyway, good morning. Red Bull chief Christian Horner maintains a show of defiance in the face of the storm alongside wife Geri Halliwell at the Bahrain Grand Prix. A controversial refereeing decision, meanwhile, helped Liverpool stay at the top of the Premier League. And we look ahead to this afternoon's Manchester derby at the Etihad.
It's a frosty, foggy start in places this morning, but it should brighten up. Plenty of sunny spells across the country. Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
Well, welcome along, everybody. Heck of a lot to go at this morning, isn't there? Now, only a day after the Prime Minister called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests, thousands have taken part yet again in pro-Palestinian protests across the country, with 12 arrests after failing to follow a dispersal order.
Yes, well, this comes today as further warnings emerge over extremism in the UK. The Daily Mail is reporting that Britain's terror threat is at its highest level since 9/11.
Well, in the same paper, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has been extremely vocal about what he thinks is going on. He's exposed the cosy relationship between the left and extremism.
Yes. Well, we're joined now by the former advisor to the Bank of England, Dr. Roger Gavolb, and the political commentator, Nathaniel Ogoniyi. Good morning to you both. Well, Roger, here you are in the studio. Now, we want to talk to you also about the war on woke in Whitehall. This is what Jeremy Hunt is proposing. But, Roger, first, your thoughts on the Prime Minister, what he said about extremism. We've got Robert Jenrick in the paper this morning talking about how there's a cosy relationship between the far left and also Islamist extremists.
Yes, I think that extremism is permeating into our culture to an unjustified and a very large extent in theater, in all sorts of different areas where a war in a country far away shouldn't really have that level of influence.
Nathaniel, I'll bring you in on this now. Some of the big headlines this morning, we've got the biggest terror threat that we've faced since 9/11. We had the Prime Minister on the steps outside Downing Street, didn't we? We've had continued protests, 12 arrests this time on Saturday. How worried do you think we should all be about this?
I think it's important to remain have a sense of context.
Oh, I'm just going to... Nathaniel, very sorry about this slight issue with your microphone there. We will come back to you. Apologies. I'll just sit with you on this then, Roger, really. I mean, we saw Suella Braverman sacked for coming out and saying relatively similar stuff when it comes to extremism, etc. Now, down the line, a couple of months down the line, we've got the Prime Minister saying the same things. You know, do you think he should probably apologise to Suella Braverman, have her back maybe, or not?
The first, certainly, I think he should at least acknowledge that she's made a point which now the zeitgeist, if you will, the collective sort of spirit and consciousness has picked up. I was a little disappointed with his speech. Like everything else he says, it sounds good, but there's really, like Keir Starmer as well, it's just words. There's nothing concrete to get your fingers around or your teeth into, is there? Okay, there have been some arrests this morning of people who didn't obey the police. That's kind of new. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that people who want to protest about Palestine should be free to do it, but they've made their point. And it's just when it spills over into the hate, the anti-Semitism and the I don't use the word Islamophobia. It's a crazy word. It means fear of Muslims. It's not fear of Muslims. It's hate for Muslims. It's anti-Islamicism. So the anti-Semitism and the anti-Islamicism that comes off the back of some of these protests, that's got to be stopped. It's illegal. But what's he going to do about it? All these fine words, but, you know, there's really...
One thing that they say they're going to do, which I imagine a lot of us would have thought was already being done, is that they're going to draw up a list of hate preachers from across the world and make it automatic that they're not allowed to come into Britain. Well, you would have thought our Home Office were already doing such things. We saw in France how quick they were to deport an imam who was spouting hatred against France, yet we can't seem to do the same here. Are we always a bit of a step or 10 steps behind?
Well, this is how politicians, Emily, and especially this government operate. They're going to reinvent the wheel. The British intelligence services already have 50,000 names of people who are here. You don't need to look for people coming across the border force. I mean, what they need to do is get control of the situation here. But it's just empty words. It depresses me.
Yeah, no, indeed. And there's a big spread in the Daily Mail today. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later on with our newsmakers. They've got a picture of that infamous blown-up bus, the 77 bus, and then Robert Jenrick, the former Immigration Minister. They're really emphasising the terrorist and extremist threat. But there is, of course, more than just one story in town today, Roger. Let's talk about Jeremy Hunt. Now, there's two stories related to Hunt today. He's going to war on immoral Whitehall waste, and he's also flirting with the idea of tax cuts again, isn't he?
I don't think, personally, Jeremy Hunt could go to war on a fly. Talk about empty words. He creeps me out. I mean, he
creeps you out.
Every time I see him, I think Bates Motel, you know. He just says all this nonsense. I mean, the latest thing is that we're going to spend hundreds of millions right away to eliminate policemen having to show up at traffic accidents and that sort of thing, because we're going to send drones. I mean, can you imagine it? Sir, breathe into this tube here. Wait a minute. Hit and run. Where did they go? I don't know. That's my drone. Get another drone. You know, it's insane.
Well, perhaps that's the way forward.
No, because what he hasn't told you is what he's going to cut. See, everything, this is my personal view with Mr. Hunt, is he tells you how great things are while he takes something away from you.
So do you think
Taxes,
he's being a bit disingenuous where he says woke spending on Whitehall departments?
Yeah, what's he going to do?
Is that actually going to pay for anything?
Exactly. What is he actually going to do? All of his things, they sound great, but when you look behind them, for example, the 55 billion pound black hole that scared the bejesus out of us so that we couldn't, so that he could introduce 25 billion of new taxes, which he did by stealth. And then more than half of it, 30 billion, disappeared 2 days later, never to be heard of again. And there wasn't a black hole a week before.
The concern for me with Jeremy Hunt, well, there's quite a lot, actually, but one of the big things, I think he listens to people like this, which has got on the front of The Observer. We've had it a lot on front of The Independent. We've had it a lot on the front of The Guardian. Tax cuts will backfire. people keep pumping him full of this stuff. And people saying as well, how dare you cut taxes, quotes, for the rich when we've got people going to food banks. And he just always seems to cave into that.
Why doesn't he raise the tax threshold from £12,570 to 20 grand so that low earners aren't suffocated by the amount of tax and interest rate rises and everything else that's been put on them? It's insane. The things that he does are illusory. It's all smoke and mirrors. So
that's a Reform Party policy, that, raising it to £20,000, the threshold there.
Absolutely. You know, and George Galloway winning has split Labour, and frankly, it all favors Rishi and Hunt carrying on. And it's scary because their monetary policy and their fiscal policy is the worst since Robin Hood.
Gosh, well, there we go. Well, Roger, you've got us off to a strong start here, so thank you very much.
We have indeed. Thank you very much.
Look forward to chatting to you again a little bit later on, but there is a couple of other bits and bobs in town. A bit lighter now, isn't it?
A little bit lighter for you. It's British music's Night of Nights. The 2024 Brit Music Awards took place last night, and it was singer-songwriter Ray...
No, me neither.
...who broke records and took home 6 awards.
You just don't understand what this means to me. Ugly crying on national television. I'm so proud of this album. I'm so proud of this album. I'm in love with music. All I ever wanted to be was an artist. And now I'm an artist with an album of the year!
Joining us now is our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tenchi. Stephanie, tell us more.
Rightly, the violins did come out, Patrick, for Ray, because she has had a successful story in the music industry. You know, she parted way with her music label, Polydor, 3 years ago. When an artist does that, you think that's going to be the end of the career. She's managed to set herself as a successful, independent music artist, which is really unheard of in the industry. And for her to win 6 awards last night was groundbreaking. She picked up one earlier this week for Songwriter of the Year, but she broke records. Like, no one's ever had such success in a night like Ray has, and I think it's quite positive. Last year, the Brits got rid of the gendered categories, and there was this big furore because all the men were winning, but this year was truly the year of the women. I think the men will complain eventually because it's unfair, but they really did get their moment. We had Kylie Minogue, who was the Global
Stephanie,
Icon
I'm trying
Award.
to think of a song by Ray. Do you know any that some of our viewers might know?
Escapism, Ice Cream, like... I think not many people might not know Ray, but I think because she's had this kind of high profile, people will start listening to her music.
We'll be looking her up later.
She reminds me a bit of Amy Winehouse, and her music is quite deep. She's faced sexual assault in the industry, so she's put all of this into her music. She is a really talented star. You know, there are a lot of stars today, is here today, gone tomorrow, but I think she really does have a bright future ahead. But it was also a big night for Kylie. 33 years in a game. Most of our viewers will know who Kylie is. She got the Global Icon Award because it's just celebrating of 9 #1 albums, 33 million records sold worldwide. So Kylie is definitely a global star. But music and politics also go hand in hand. Yesterday, we had a former sub-postmistress, Jo Hamilton, who was presenting one of the awards, and she used it to urge the government to give the compensation to the post submasters who are waiting for their money. So that was quite a moment as well.
Gosh, the post office scandal got in there. I wouldn't have thought that would happen.
I thought they'd released a charity single or something. No,
it's probably on its way, but definitely music and politics definitely do go hand in hand.
Now, one of the big things about the awards for me is the outfits.
Oh,
as well, and some of the costumes, if you can call them that. I mean, there were some interesting ones last night, weren't there?
There was Ellie Goulding. So all eyes were on her because she's just announced her divorce from her husband. But she was on stage with Calvin Harris, and she looked like she was just wearing a white swimming costume on stage, which was quite a bit of jaw-dropping things. And then there was Dua Lipa, of course, who looked amazing, and Maya Jama, who hosted the show as well. So, yeah, obviously this is music's wildest night, so the fashion's going to come out.
Oh, well, hang on. I'm being told that there was somebody who turned up dressed as a giraffe.
Yes, that was Rob Beckett.
God.
That is a fashion faux pas right there. I'm like, who decides to come to the Brit Awards dressed as a giraffe?
Someone who wants a lot of attention.
Yeah, and he's got it rightly so.
Presume, look, Rob Beckett is a comedian. I like Rob Beckett. I think he's obviously taking the mick, isn't he?
He is, definitely
Well,
so.
to be honest, I mean, people have been... have worn more ridiculous outfits than that.
There was a meat
They have.
dress once.
And there was also Talia Storm. She's a celebrity influencer, and she wore a Union Jack blazer. And the last time we saw that was on Jerry Halliwell, so she looked pretty good as well. So there was definitely some good fashion hits last night.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry Halliwell's in the news for another reason today. We'll be talking about that later, won't we, with our sports reporter, Aidan McGee. But,
We will indeed.
Yes, we'll look forward to picking you through more of the showbiz stories with you a little bit later on. But I think we can have a little look now, can't we, at some of the stories
Wasn't
coming
expecting
into
the post office to come up at the Brit Awards.
It was a
There you
moment.
go.
No, but I suppose they'll crowbar in anything, won't they, these days? But there we go. Anyway, shall we have a little look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom?
Yes, the US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. The operation, carried out jointly with Jordan's Air Force, comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe. Biden says he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March.
Well, Queen Camilla is set to take a break from official royal duties after leading the monarchy in public since the King's cancer diagnosis. Now, it's understood that she'll spend a few days of private downtime with the King and her own family. Her Majesty will resume engagements on the 11th of March when she'll represent the King and lead the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey.
And a 2020 election rematch is looking more likely as former President Donald Trump won 3 more Republican primaries overnight in Missouri, Michigan and Idaho. Mr. Trump's only rival, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, is still searching for her first win, trailing second behind Trump in each state.
Yeah. So, look, the cost of living pressures, they're already biting more than a little bit, aren't they? But today, rail passengers in England and Wales will face a new 5% train fare price hike.
I thought they'd only just gone up.
It'd be nice
there
if
you
they turned
go.
up on time every now and again, wouldn't it?
Might be nice. If you're in Scotland, the rise is even higher, almost 9%. But that won't take effect for another 4 weeks. Oh, well, that's all right then.
Well, that's OK. Got time to save up. But look, how does this impact you? We took to the streets to find out.
I think at the minute, nothing's really changed on the trains, so it's not really fair to raise the prices.
We are students, so we are always struggling over here because we have to meet our expenditure fees and our rents and everything. So in that case, when the train fare goes higher, it's more difficult for us to survive here.
I would be quite happy for the rail fares to go up if they invested the profits in the infrastructure so that the rail network and the rolling carriage was consistently good standard and that the trains ran on time.
Travel correspondent for The Independent now, the legendary Simon Calder joins us. Simon, good stuff, great to have you on. How on earth can they justify a price hike to our shoddy trains?
Well, actually, if you are the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, and I don't think you are, Patrick, but what he is saying is that we are being really nice to rail travellers for reasons which nobody can quite remember. The normal increase in rail fares at the start of each year is whatever the retail price index was in the previous July. That happens to be 9%. So by saying, actually, we're only going to do it 4.9%, we are being really helpful to you. We've got a special intervention. And also, I think there's politics at work, funnily enough, in an election year. So people, they will be able to say, we're keeping increases under 5%. What that actually means for people, well, if you are going, for instance, from Cardiff to Bristol today, or you're going from Leeds to Manchester, you will be paying for a standard anytime ticket, you'll be paying £1 more. This only affects so-called regulated fares, and those are season tickets, journeys to and from big cities, and some longer distance off-peak services, but they also tend to affect other ticket prices as well. So, yeah, people will be finding out a lot more. And just to put it into context, there's one particular journey from Didcot Parkway in Oxfordshire to Swindon. It only takes 14 minutes. It's about 24 miles, and that is going to be going up to over £30 for less than a quarter of an hour of rail travel. And people are understandably cheesed off. I mean, it's as though your rail ticket is now actually a kind of on-the-spot fine.
Yeah.
But we should be grateful in England and Wales that it's just 4.9%, whereas in Scotland, 9%.
Yeah, and that's going to be, it's going to be 8.7%, they say, and that's going to be taking place on April Fool's Day. I'm not going to comment on that. But the thing is that in Scotland, the railways are even more heavily subsidised than they are in England. They've also got an interesting experiment at the moment, about halfway through, where they halve for 6 months the peak fares. They basically just said we're only going to have off-peak fares. I've been trying to find out what effect that's had, because obviously the hope is, well, you actually get so many more people travelling by train that you increase your revenue, rather than people who are commuting between Glasgow and Edinburgh just thinking, oh, that's handy, I'll spend that on a decent lunch. But at the root of this, you heard from those commuters, that's really important, but the root of this is the fact that most people in Britain don't go anywhere near a train.
This is it.
Well, that's
exactly, exactly. That was going to be my next question, Simon, because, you know, I'm sorry, but fewer and fewer people are using trains, and I'm not surprised as well. You're being asked to pay more, and then you get on, and there's someone blaring their music out of their phone without putting their headphones in, and you've got empty Burger King wrappers everywhere, and depending on what time you get on the train, a variety of different fluids swirling around the thing. And then you think, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I on this train? Why am I paying for this? You should be paying me.
Well, I hope you weren't referring to Emily's travel habits just then. No, it's the railway is really important for people like me. There's about 20 million or so of us in Britain who don't have access to a car, so it's really important. And yeah, I've seen the service deteriorate. We've just seen the end of the latest round of industrial action by the Train Drivers Union, ASLEF, that ended at midnight on LNER and on Northern, and we wake up to fare rises. But at the root of this, if we're talking for 3 minutes, during that time, taxpayers would have pumped £45,000 into the bottomless pit of rail finances. It's just extraordinary how much the railways consume. It's about £250 per second to keep what's, frankly, a pretty lousy service running.
Simon, just very quickly before we have to let you go. Anyway, we're hearing that Queen Camilla is set to jet off somewhere because obviously she's had a difficult time recently. And apparently it's somewhere sunny. Where's good this time of year? Top one place for the weather. Where are you going to get the hottest temperatures?
Well, you should just head down to Egypt. A really easy 5-hour flight. Pop you down in Sharm el Sheikh or Hurghada. All-inclusive deals. I can recommend some really good places for her, and she'll get that much-needed sunshine.
I would love to see...
Oh, maybe it's Egypt.
I'd love to see Queen Camilla living it up in Sharm el Sheikh. Simon, thank you very much. As ever, you take care. Simon Calder there, the travel correspondent for The Independent.
Yes, Egypt would be nice. Fancy that?
No.
No?
Not for me.
OK, well, on Wednesday evening, we'll be doing a budget special live from Whitehaven, where we'll be dissecting Jeremy Hunt's spring budget.
Oh, yeah. And you can be part of the audience. There's Michelle Dewberry and Nigel Farage broadcast their shows live. So just scan the QR code on your screen and you can join Nigel and Michelle. Hopefully there will at some point be a QR code on your screen. So there we go.
Otherwise, you can go to gbnews.com. Of course you can. You can go there and sign up, see if you can get your ticket and be there. It's always brilliant when Michelle and Farage are on the road.
It's good because you get to see them in the wild.
You get to see them in the wild.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, completely unprompted, very natural. Lots of engagement with whoever is there. Anything could happen. That is true.
One of the last times Nigel did a out and about show, he ended up, I think, on someone's shoulders, dancing to, was it Slade or something like that?
Oh yeah,
so,
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember.
It's always worth the trip anyway. Well, there we go. Well, I think we should probably give you a little bit of an update on the weather, shall we?
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon. But for many, it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
Well, there's your weather, but still to come, Aidan McGee will be back to cover all the latest for a big morning of sport. Manchester Derby later, isn't it? Looking forward to that. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind, for which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head, but he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Patrick and me, Emily.
Now, the Scottish Government's National Care Service Bill underwent its first major test this week, with the first round debate to agree its general principles in the Scottish Parliament.
Yes, well, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire joined the Minister for Social Care, Marie Todd, at Alzheimer's Scotland to find out if the bill's restructuring has done enough to improve care provisions for some of Scotland's most vulnerable people.
Roughly 90,000 people in Scotland are affected by dementia, a barbaric disease that slowly chips away at memory, personality and familial recognition. The Scottish Government's upcoming National Care Service Bill intends to transfer select social care responsibilities from NHS services run by local authorities to a new national service. Scottish Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport, Marie Todd, believes people with dementia are among those who stand to benefit the most.
This new system of social care will meet their needs, their individual needs, far more flexibly and appropriately in future. Time and time again, I'm told how difficult it is to navigate the system of social care in this country, and this will be a real improvement.
Alzheimer's Scotland works tirelessly to ensure no individual or family needs to endure their dementia journey alone. Vicky Cahill, the charity's policy and public affairs lead, says the success of the service hangs on the focused approach of service delivery to fit their broad spectrum of needs.
With the National Care Service, we hope that we can provide a more consistent service delivery, which means that everyone has the opportunity to access those services and supports that they need. Those services have to be adaptable and flexible, and at the current time, that's simply not available based on the current provision, which is done locally.
But for carers and those newly diagnosed with Alzheimer's, the delayed 2029 rollout may come too late, and the perceived lack of details at present has some questioning its practicality. Thea Laurie retired early from being a school teacher to care for her mum at home. While she commends the formation of a national care service on paper, concerns fashioned from her own experiences outweigh her optimism.
How could you fault the idea of a national care service linked up to the National Health Service? There'd be so many pluses and benefits from it that I would strongly advocate that it's a marvellous, marvellous concept. But sadly, we are questioning how viable it's going to be, and waiting to 2029 for it to happen is a bit of an ask.
Despite the delay and a lack of detail, an appetite for change is tempering a sense of cautious optimism, so that future families may benefit from improved support services to help them better manage this devastating condition. Tony Maguire, GB News.
OK, thank you very much, Tony. Right, now, I'm very excited for a little bit later on this hour when we're going to be whizzing you through the papers, because there is so much news about today. UK spies telling MPs that we are facing the worst terror threat since 9/11. A lot of issues when it comes to radical Islamism on the streets.
Yes, the government also wanting to ban hate preachers from coming to Britain. You might have thought they'd already have thought of that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, they're going to be doing that, apparently, according to proposals from the Home Office, anyway.
Shame about the ones that are already here, but there we go.
Yes, well...
And quite a bit of royal news about today as well. Apparently Queen Camilla is going to be jetting off on holiday. Andrew's back on the front pages as well. The Mirror, Andrew Fraser's fresh court bombshell. So, lots for us to talk about, and that's, of course, before we got stuck into Jeremy Hunt's tax cuts, haven't we?
And also, you've been getting in touch. Alison says she's up early, as always. Dogs don't do lions. My dog does. He loves to have a lion, a long sleep. Anyway, what a lovely surprise to find my two favourite presenters in GB News, and she also loves the fabulous Roger. Loved his Bates Motel comment. Yes, Roger did say that Jeremy Hunt belongs in the Bates Motel.
Beanie says, I've been up since 3 a.m. Due to some personal pain, so very sorry to hear about that, of course, but how lovely to see you both on breakfast. Well, look, hopefully we can take your mind off it for a little bit, but here to certainly take some people's minds off a few things is the Housewives' favourites. It's time to go through all of the latest sports news with broadcaster Ada McGee.
Good morning to you both. How are you?
Good. You like being introduced as the Housewives' favourite?
I love it. I do actually. Yeah.
You do.
I haven't worked with Patrick for a few months, so it's, it feels fresh. It feels fresh as the first day you said it.
It does. Yeah. No, I will relentlessly keep saying. I'm very nervous, Aidan.
Go on.
Manchester derby, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah. 3:30 this afternoon at the Etihad. Trying times for Manchester United, it has to be said. I mean, they've lost 10 matches at home in all competitions this season. That never happened, even under Alex Ferguson's reign of 26 years. Sir Jim Ratcliffe had the opportunity many times over last week, Patrick, when he did a round of interviews from all platforms and they're circulated all around the world to back Erik ten Hag. I can't believe he wasn't asked to, but he obviously clearly declined to. And I can understand why they might think this guy isn't the man for them. He doesn't have the personality. I've sat around so many managers down the years. I sat next to Fergie many times down the years when I used to cover Man United. Now, he was a one-off. But sometimes you just know when an individual is fitted to a club. And now more than ever, you need personality. You see Jurgen Klopp when they win a game. Yeah. He goes in front of the Klopp, and he gives it. He really does. He has he's identifiable as an individual, as a personality with those supporters. I don't get that with Erik ten Hag. You're a Man United fan. Do you feel that yourself? I mean, look, he's got plenty of qualities. But if they lose today, having lost at home to Fulham last week. I know they won at Forest in the week in the FA Cup. But if they get hammering today, which is eminently possible, because that's what usually happens against Manchester City, I just wonder how much more patience there is going to be with him. After the Fulham game, he started talking about how the players showed character. Fulham hadn't won there since 2003.
Yeah.
It sounded like Comic Alley. You've got bombs raining all over the place, and then suddenly you're saying everything's fine. It's utterly, utterly ludicrous. And now, look, United are good fodder for the media. They drive traffic, they generate clicks, but it's still worth poring over the situation there, because they can't keep gaslighting everybody by saying top six is good. It's not. Marcus Rashford is not playing well. He's a player who knocked in excess of 30 goals, I think, last season. And they've got this game today. And it usually crystallises the problems for United, because there's nothing worse than having a rival 3 miles across the city who are doing so well. The back page of the Star today was, I'll just get the headline for you. What was it? Yeah, the noise job, right? Now, that's interesting because back in 2009, I was with Sir Alex Ferguson in South Africa when he made the jibe about Man City, the noisy neighbours. Yeah. Now, roles are reversed. It's almost like Man United are the junior partner in this rivalry. And so they're coming up on the inside track, trying to put City's noses out of joint. And I'll be honest with you, there shouldn't be Man United's position in a bigger club.
No, it shouldn't be, really, should it? Now, Geri Halliwell, former Spice Girl, appears to be standing by her man, spotted in Bahrain.
Apparently, there's no... You can't be a former Spice Girl. You're either a Spice Girl for life or you're...
Oh, really?
Yeah,
OK, well,
so.
Spice
I'm not an
Girl
expert.
Geri Halliwell.
I'm not an expert.
Can you remember which one she was?
Yeah, she was Ginger Spice.
Ginger Spice, yes.
Yeah, she was
I
in that
imagine
union.
you are quite an expert on the Spice Girls, to be fair.
I remember them. I left school the year, and did my A-levels the year they had their first #1 back in 1996.
Did you?
So, yesterday, her embattled husband, Christian Horner, 50-year-old team principal of Red Bull. We had this situation about a month ago where he was under investigation for illicit, or we should say that none of these messages.
He denies everything.
Yeah, he denies everything, and we're not even sure of the source of these messages. That was an internal investigation in Austria by the Red Bull team. Nothing came to pass. Whoever is driving this, whoever's behind this campaign, obviously wasn't happy with that, because they really dropped him in the mud in the last couple of days, or last 3 days or so, because they sent this email around to everybody. Now, we had somebody on yesterday called Rosanna Tennant, fantastic journalist. She's over in Bahrain, but she was on the show. She actually went up to him and asked him yesterday, what are you going to do about this? What do you say about the latest accusations or the latest material that's dropped in everyone's inbox? And he said, I'm not going to comment on anonymous, speculative messages from an unknown source. I've always been confident that I would be here. There was a full, lengthy internal process that was completed by an independent KC, and the grievance that was raised was dismissed. End of, move on. Now, anytime we're in trouble, and I've been there many times, you like to be able to say, end of, move on. It's not as simple as that. This one's going to run and run.
OK.
But there was a show of defiance yesterday. They were there yesterday, they were together. They looked as if, in public anyway, that everything was fine. The backdrop to this, Stephanie Tetu tells me just a few minutes ago, hot off the press, is that there is a Netflix documentary going on called Drive to Survive. I think that's brilliant content for it, do you not?
Yeah, well, it absolutely is brilliant content for them. Yeah, 100%. I
remember when Tottenham had their documentary, the Amazon documentary a few years ago. It helped that their manager got sacked during the process. It just gives a little bit of story, a little bit of narrative around it.
Yeah, it does, really. It does. I mean, they've been putting on a very amorous display, kissing and holding hands and walking through.
Well, it's more interesting than the race, Patrick, I'll tell you that. I mean, Verstappen won again. He won 22 out of 23 races last season. It was very processional yesterday. He had a little bit of a tussle with Charles Leclerc of Ferrari in the opening couple of laps. After that, he stormed to victory, and it's a chilling message for the rest of the season, because if it's as boring as that, I'll tell you what, I might bring the pillow next time I watch the race.
Well, Aidan, we'll be hearing a bit more from you a bit later on. I've just seen below that story about Formula 1 in the Daily Mail there is Brits getting a balanced diet of foie gras and Greggs.
No, not Greggs.
Which I think is... I mean, I love Greggs, so I think it's almost like the kind of thing between...
I'd love a foie gras
Your
Greggs.
foie gras, I'm Greggs.
My nephew's got Greggs pyjamas.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh,
as in branded Greggs, not just American
Greggs
Greg.
pyjamas, whatever next.
All right, look, we've still got
Thanks,
loads
Aidan.
coming your way. We are going to be looking at more of the front pages and the biggest stories of the day in Making the News with the wonderful Georgie Frost and Emma Wolf. And there really is a heck of a lot of news to pick through today.
There is indeed. This is Breakfast. We're on GB News.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough. against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
Welcome back. It's 6:40 in the morning. You're watching and listening to GB News Breakfast with Patrick and me, Emily.
OK, so let's take a little look, shall we? Some of the newspaper front pages. I mean, there's quite a lot going about today, actually. So The Times is reporting on Jeremy Hunt's struggle to secure funds for a 2p personal tax cut in the budget. The Telegraph leads on Hunt's plans to combat excess civil servants in the upcoming budget. Is war on woke?
Yes, The Observer reports on top economists warning the Chancellor that his planned tax cuts will backfire.
And The Mirror has raked up the Prince Andrew row again. They're saying he's facing new questions in secret papers that are set to be released, and they have obviously furnished that article with a picture of him and Jeffrey Epstein.
They have indeed. And The Sun says the royals are in crisis as it emerges that Queen Camilla is taking a holiday.
Yeah, bless her. Well,
Where's she going?
Well, that's the big myth, isn't it? The Daily Star leads with Meghan the Mayo-holic, who goes through 3 big bottles of mayonnaise a week. It sounds a little bit like you, actually, that.
Sounds like me. I do like mayonnaise. Yeah. I do like... and ketchup. I don't discriminate.
No. Well, look, joining us to go through what's making the news in consumer affairs expert Georgie Frost and writer and columnist Emma Wolfe. Now, look, one of the stories that we missed out from our little roundup there is what's on the front and also inside the Mail, Emma. Hate preachers are going to be barred from coming to Britain. This ties in with the bigger story as well of general levels of extremism. Look, what's going on here? It's quite a bit.
It does. Well, I think this follows on Rishi Sunak's emergency statement. You remember on the steps of Downing Street, we were all very excited. What's happening on a Friday afternoon? You know, this is very unusual. He made a statement basically, you know, raising the issue that is worrying many, many people at the moment about extremism and about the divisions in our society and about this, you know, feeling of Islamic extremism and the marches and all of this. So now we have this announcement, another one, I feel, another one of these government kind of knee-jerk reactions with not that much detail, not that much meat on the bones. Hate preachers will be blocked from entering the UK under new plans drawn up by the government amid a shocking increase in extremist activity. So they're going to be identified. I mean, you would have thought they'd be doing this before, frankly. This is what worries me. But anyway, extremists are going to be identified and prevented from entering from countries including Afghanistan, Pakistan and Indonesia. And those on the list will be automatically refused entry to the UK. Am I missing something here?
Well, this is it. I mean, I'm just reading again here now. Well, shock horror, you know, we do already have laws in place to stop this.
Again,
it's not been
it's like the demo laws, isn't it? It's like these laws exist. You just need to enforce them. And as we know, the Home Office is singularly not fit for purpose. If you look at immigration, if you look at the borders, if you look at visas being granted to fake care homes, everything in the past few weeks has demonstrated that actually the Home Office really needs root and branch reform, if not demolishing and starting again.
Georgie, I mean, it is a very concerning thing for a lot of people, isn't it? What they see either on the streets or this continued terror threat that we are hearing a lot about.
Yeah, of course, but I'm drawn to this in the Telegraph, which says ministers also believe they can use existing national security powers to boost efforts for people to bar people from entering the UK. We already have these powers in place. I think a lot of what we're going to hear from Rishi Sunak over the next few days, we've got a budget coming up, of course, is going to be, why on earth didn't you do this over the last 14 years? They're going to be trying to position themselves that this country could lead us forward with security, with economics, and actually the question has to be, well, you've been in long enough. Why on earth weren't you doing this anyway? This seems a no-brainer, as Emma said.
I mean, how many stories do we have to hear and read about where there's someone who's a supporter of Hamas living in social housing in a part of London or Birmingham or wherever? I mean, this sort of stuff is just crazy.
And we know that there are imams in mosques who are very, very organised and who are, as Georgie said, already preaching racism, incitement, using intimidation or violence to undermine the democratic process. These are the people that we need to, A, stop being in our country, but also crack down if they are spreading this kind of hatred. We don't need these divisions. We don't need the right and the left or the centre-right and the centre-left to be at war with each other. It's when it's when we have extremism on the streets that people do feel genuinely frightened.
I think, and again, as Robert Jenrick addresses in the Mail today, you know, we have to try to get around this idea that simply raising the issue is in some way Islamophobic. Genuine Islamophobia, obviously no place for it. But talking about radical Islamist extremism and the fact we don't want that in Britain, that is a perfectly legitimate conversation to be had. And Robert Jenrick does raise that. Shall we just shift it on a little bit now and just talk about some stuff to do with Jeremy Hunt? Immoral Whitehall waste, Georgie?
Yeah, can I just repeat what I said earlier? Just repeat, play. What have they been doing for the last 14 years? Yes, look, they're talking about Jeremy Hunt is going to be desperate to find some extra cash down the back of the sofa to throw at us in the budget on Wednesday. One of those things he's talking about is cutting down on what is called immoral Whitehall waste. So are they going to slash tens of thousands of civil service jobs? Now, one of the things he points out is a waste of spending is this woke spending by Whitehall departments where civil servants' time and resources are spent on equality, diversity and inclusion hires and initiatives. I think a lot of people will agree there's a lot of waste there, without doubt. I'm a little bit concerned if you look more into it. You know, we do have a bit of a productivity issue and it does go to the heart of the government as well, so getting more tech involved. But one of the suggestions here is saying interviewing crime witnesses and victims via video call to speed up police investigations. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm thinking some victims that have gone through some harrowing experience. What, on a Zoom call? I mean...
Perhaps not the most appropriate thing. But it's interesting, though, isn't it, Emma? Because during the Brexit years, the number of civil servants did balloon because there was more work to do to get that done. Now they're trying to reduce the number of civil servants. I do wonder how they're going to be able to do this and how much pushback there will be from within the civil service.
Of course there will. The blob likes to blob things up. Look, I mean, across the papers today, we've got Jeremy Hunt. Apparently he's going to the £300 million tax raid on second homeowners as well, who let out their properties for holiday lets. He's going to cut Whitehall waste. I mean, he's really desperate. They really are scrabbling around down the backs of the sofas.
They are. And they're being warned elsewhere that they can't cut taxes.
They can't.
It's worth noting as well that I think Labour and I've done several pieces on a series of Keir Starmer's screeching U-turns in the last few weeks. One of the things that they don't appear to be U-turning on is their position on non-dom status. And now it looks as though Jeremy Hunt's going to copy that, which is remarkable, really, when you think about it. It's supposed to be a Conservative Chancellor, doesn't really appear to be behaving in a particularly Conservative way.
Yeah, it's straight out of the George Osborne playbook. Take the strategies off Labour first, nip it in the bud there. I mean, it's become very politicised because, of course, Rishi Sunak and his wife over the non-dom status. If the government is going to talk about cutting taxes and driving productivity, etc., we are a heavily, the most taxed nation. This is a Conservative government. The way to get money to cut people's taxes, 2p off income tax or whatever, is possibly not to tax other people. I mean, I could be wrong, but you're just raising taxes elsewhere.
Shifting the burden slightly.
I just think it's going to be... Look, one thing we need to do in this country, and I will go back to this, is we need to drive innovation and productivity, entrepreneurs and business spirit to get the country going.
Yeah.
They need to, if they need to cut back on things like non-dom status, there's going to need to be some sort of middle ground. If they just say, right, that's it, you have to pay taxes here, you have to pay taxes abroad, who's going to come here?
Well, I was reading how non-doms are moving to Italy because they may face
Fancy a
more
bit of the
taxes
Amalfi
here.
Coast.
And this is the problem. People spend money here, don't they? So we don't want to badly affect our own economy because of ideological reasons.
No, but
Talking about something that affects our economy, ministers apparently failed to consider the long-term pain of lockdown, didn't they? This is another story in the Telegraph today.
This is a really interesting one, and I'm afraid I was reading this last night going, who knew? How many of us were saying this? How many of us were... Well, actually, I wasn't brave enough to stand up and say at the beginning of lockdowns. Everyone seemed to be going along with it. But so many academics, so many scientists, so many in the media who have a lot to answer for were silenced or just weren't brave enough to stand up and say, do you know what? And especially scientists, to say, because it would have damaged their research grants, their prospects for promotion, all of that. Anyway, the focus of this article is about the damage that it did, especially to children, especially to young people, who are suffering now an epidemic of mental illness, who are hooked on antidepressants like nothing else. Babies like mine that was born in lockdown, what did that do to them? Lockdown, social isolation for babies. What about young people? Not in contact, not in education, but not in contact with other people. Teenagers who didn't do their GCSEs and A-levels, who are now sitting on those horrific jobless lists,
I remember
and who may
talking about
well be
this.
out of work for life. And so many of us were thinking this. And when we got to the end of the first and the second lockdown, I mean, it's all a blur, isn't it? But it really got to the point where, hang on a minute, do we really need to lock down this country again for what I think was a negligible risk, a serious risk to some vulnerable
Well, I remember making
groups.
these points at the time and again, on the media and elsewhere, and people just didn't want to hear it.
I know, and
People did
Emily,
not
the media was
want to hear it.
obsessed with locking down.
Because the argument is so strong to counter that. Oh, so you're arguing people should die?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're like...
It's a ridiculous way to phrase
It is ridiculous, but, I mean, I couldn't agree with Emma more here. It's like, the really disturbing thing for me here, apart from the fact we've got 8 million NHS waiting lists, is the silence of scientists here to try and get research grants for their... And it's mentioned here in this article by Professor Robert Dingwall, a former government COVID advisor, who said, I'm not surprised. I don't blame those scientists for keeping their heads down, as they had a career to build.
But it's
Are our
ridiculous. Science
scientists...
shouldn't be
Think about it. Think about the power that scientists have. Think about what they do. If they are keeping quiet over something so
And the way that they
fundamental-
became politically involved, scientists becoming politically involved in the process.
And what did everyone say? Whenever anyone would make the kind of points that we've made here, say, oh, where's your science degree? Where is it? Where's your medical degree?
Don't you care about the old grannies?
You care
Of
about
course we do.
People with a science degree,
But look at
were
the
not saying what they really thought.
And look at the long-term damage in terms of those other excess deaths. But I mean, literally, cancers that weren't diagnosed, that weren't treated. People are now dying and carrying on dying. Look at the suicides. Look at the lives that were ruined. Look at the businesses that have gone out of trade and will never return.
And it undermines that. The next time that there is something, anything, and there's a need for experts, it does undermine it because people remember these things.
But we need to make sure that we know how we will respond when there's another pandemic, or whatever we call it. And
we had government planning.
Yeah,
This was the ridiculous thing. Where
in
did that
reality,
go?
how is it going to be next time? Because I think we're going to, if we ever face lockdowns like that again...
Isn't that what the COVID inquiry should have looked at? Is these sorts of questions, is the silence... But after the first lockdown, look, fair enough, nobody blames you for just reacting as the rest of the world were.
Yeah.
But we had a second, we had a third.
Well,
it kept going.
I remember doing a piece on radio where I used to work about the Nepalese variant, which turned out not to exist, and that was going to be the reason for one of the lockdowns. It didn't exist.
It's like talking about the common cold and telling everybody to stay indoors and go indoors. And you forget what it was like, don't you? You forget. I remember leaving my house and going under the window so that my neighbour didn't see me. What was all that about? It's just madness that a government could have told us to stay indoors and only go out.
Outdoor gyms being cordoned off.
About what constitutes
park benches being taped off.
Real nadir.
Well, look, thankfully we've got our freedom now, and so does Queen Camilla. We've just got a couple of minutes to talk about this. So Queen Camilla is apparently going to be off on her holes. I'm not sure if we've got any idea where she's going. Does anyone know anything about
Sunshine trip, but she is taking a private flight somewhere. She's done 13 official. She's really been putting a shift in. She's the last royal standing. Everyone else is in hospital.
Have a nice holiday. She deserves it.
Where do you think she's going?
I don't know. Somewhere lovely, let's hope.
Simon suggested, the travel expert, suggested that Egypt's
Sharm
nice
el-Sheikh.
this time of year. So she might be off to there. I've heard Tenerife is nice this time
I think
of
she
year.
might go somewhere further afield. I think she might go to a private island, St Bart's or somewhere like that.
Bit of mystique.
Have a word with Pippa Middleton's hubby.
Yeah.
He owns St Bart's.
Well, that's true. That's true. Well, good for her, but I think we all wish her well, don't we? I think.
We do wish her well.
She's had rather a lot on. Really, really, really great start to this paper review. So thank you very much, both of you. I'm really looking forward to cracking on again in the hours to come, as well as we pick through more of the day's news. There's also a heck of a lot about anti-anxiety drugs being prescribed to 8 million and linked to hundreds of deaths as well. And
I want to know what people at home think about this war on woke. I mean, how many times have we heard this from government, that there's going to be a war on woke, a war on waste in Whitehall, and then what happens? The costs just continue to balloon. But is this time the time Jeremy Hunt is going to get to grips with this? What do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com. And, of course, if you've read Robert Jenrick's piece in the Mail on Sunday, we'll be talking about that too. He's got some strong stuff to say. He says, why does the left consider it Islamophobic to want to expel the cancer of extremism from Britain? Well, there's a question.
yeah, this is an absolutely massive story. We're going to be delving in with this at the top of the next hour. We're going to be talking about whether or not actually it is time to stand up now. We've just heard from our paper reviewers there about this idea to get rid of radical preachers. I know a huge amount of our viewers and listeners are concerned about the ones that are already here. In the wake of the October 7th attacks, we were seeing some of these videos coming out of mosques around the country, and that looks incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and it makes you think, doesn't it? How prevalent are these kind of ideas, and what impact are they having on society? Rishi Sunak in the week said, let's stand up against extremism. Let's really try to make sure the police are policing these protests and not just managing them. We had 12 arrests, this particular one on Saturday, apparently. So, OK, maybe that's a step in the right direction. But I just worry that we've let the genie out of the bottle.
And the war on Gaza very much being used as a recruitment device to extremism, to terror groups. That's in the Mail too, so we'll be getting stuck into that.
Absolutely. We're talking about that. We'll be giving you the royal latest. We're also going to be talking as well about all the latest from the Brit Awards, some surprise winners, some shocking outfits and a load of that.
Some very shocking outfits, as usual. I think that's what you've got to do, though. I mean, there were some very revealing outfits too. I mean, I don't know how you have the confidence to wear that down the red carpet, some of these dresses. They're not really dresses, they're lingerie.
Can I just quickly tease the debate we've got? Should all 30-year-olds in Britain be given £10,000 by the government? Discuss after the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon, but for many it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Headliners, Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kellie J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kellie J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also, even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kellie J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say that, will they? Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of March.
This is Breakfast with me, Patrick Christys, and Emily Carver.
Just a day after the Prime Minister's threat to democracy warning, pro-Palestinian protests have been back in force, taken to the streets again as senior MPs raise the alarm over rising extremism.
Yeah, when will it end, eh? Now, Jeremy Hunt says that he's going to go to war over woke Whitehall waste as he continues to tease the prospect of tax cuts in Wednesday's budget.
A record-breaking Brit Awards, singer Ray takes 6 gongs and Kylie Minogue is crowned the global icon.
Well, after holding the fort over the past few weeks, Queen Camilla is set to take a break. Where will she be going on holiday and who will be leading the royals?
And at 7:20, £10,000 just for turning 30. We'll be debating a new proposal for a citizen's inheritance.
Yeah, get your views coming in on this. I want to know if you think that all people who turn 30 should just be given 10 grand. I can imagine the views coming in.
If it's retrospective, I'm OK with it.
Good morning. A controversial refereeing decision helped keep Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. Manchester City, meanwhile, have their chance to stay in touch as they host rivals Man United this afternoon, and there was a familiar winner on the opening day of the F1 season in Bahrain.
It's a frosty, foggy start in places this morning, but it should brighten up. Plenty of sunny spells across the country. Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
£10,000 for every 30-year-old in the land.
Can I just say...
It's going to be pricey, isn't it?
The emails are already flooding in on this, all right? And it's fair to say that an overwhelming majority of you think it's a completely bonkers and rubbish idea to give every 30-year-old 10 grand, but we're going to get to that in a little bit, aren't we?
We are indeed. Someone made me laugh. She said, I'm OK with it if it's for every 57-year-old. I think she might be 57 herself, but anyway. Only a day after the Prime Minister called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests, thousands have taken part again in pro-Palestinian protests across the country. 12 arrests after failing to follow a dispersal order yesterday.
Yeah, the police were told to actually police the flipping thing and not just manage it, weren't they? But it comes today as further warnings emerge over extremism in the UK. Very serious reports in the Daily Mail because Britain's terror threat is now apparently at the highest level since 9/11.
Yes, while in the same paper, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has exposed the cosy relationship between the left and extremism.
Well, joining us now is former advisor to the Bank of England and UK Treasury. It's Dr. Robert Givob, and also political commentator John Oxley. Both of you, thank you very, very much. John, I'll start with you on this. A few extremist-related stories knocking about today. So you've got what Sunak said about the protests. You've got the fact that apparently our terror threat is now the highest that it's been since 9/11. Robert Jenrick saying there's a cosy link between the left and extremism, and also an interesting story as well in the Telegraph about how we're going to be booting out hate preachers. I'm quite keen to focus a bit on that one, really. I mean, the concern would be that we've already got quite a lot of them preaching radical stuff here already, haven't we, John?
Well, yes, that's indeed a problem. If we've got a list ready to go of people who we want to kick out for this, then we have to ask questions about how did those people, if they're from overseas, how did they come here? How did they get to positions of power within these religious institutions? And, how are they having access to people? Because, it's great to kick them out. France have been doing it already. But, really, if these people are unsuitable and, their views are that extreme and what they're doing is so inflammatory, why isn't there more of a preemptive approach around this to stop them getting a foothold?
Yes, that would be nice. Roger, in the Mail on Sunday, Robert Jenrick, former immigration minister, has a lot to say. And something that stuck out to me is that he says there seem to be stronger laws against football fans than extremists wanting jihad. Of course, he's referring to the policing, or perhaps the two-tier policing he sees when it comes to these Palestinian protests.
Yeah, I mean, there's just words from the government and the opposition, and really no action, no plans, nothing concrete. I mean, the Tories are in danger of becoming an endangered species. I think by this time next year, there'll be absolutely no mating pairs left. It's pretty frightening. So I'd like to see somebody come out with some concrete plans about what they're going to do to stop the hate spilling over from the protest marches.
Yeah.
Yes, well, from what we know, it seems barring hate preachers from coming to Britain is one of their priorities, although, again, as we've said before, should that not already be happening?
And there is something that I'm just seeing now that's been put out by the Centre for Migration Control, which is, if we are seriously talking about banning hate preachers, if we are talking about blocking people coming into Britain, I mean, apparently an illegal migrant was able to enter the UK despite allegedly committing a sexual offence against a 17-year-old child just days before, and they were allowed into Britain. I mean, it does beg the question, how on earth are we actually going to be kicking anyone out? But, John, from a political perspective on this, one thing I thought was quite interesting was we've got the George Galloway reintroduction into Parliament, OK? Now, Keir Starmer's in a squiffy position over Palestine, as we all know. Rishi Sunak used the opportunity to stand outside Downing Street, I think, didn't he, and say, look, we're coming out strong against this now, we need to store out these marches, etc. How do you make where these two leaders are at the moment? I think Keir Starmer is in quite a bit of trouble.
I think it will be a bit of a shock for Keir Starmer. I mean, obviously, they had their own internal problems, basically having to drop their own candidate in the middle of the election campaign. But it does show that in these small constituencies, if the right person can mobilise, they can get a huge swing towards them. And in Rochdale, we saw that not just with George Galloway, but with the other independent as well. And so it starts to concern Keir Starmer. And I think more than that, there's probably 30 or so Labour MPs who are looking around thinking, oh, my constituency could turn out like that as well. But I think, on the other hand, for Rishi Sunak, he will want to drive that wedge, but also, law and order, particularly around terrorism of this type, is something the Conservatives always want to appear strong on. So if they're trying to bolster their voters, particularly trying to pull over some of those more authoritarian-ish voters from parties like Reform, people who care a lot about law and order, this is a big one to push on for him, I think, to show that the Conservatives do care about this and they're actually taking action on it.
And when it comes to elections, of course, there's a huge amount of apathy. So that does make it possible for extreme candidates to come first and win seats. George Galloway may not be the only one that goes in off the back of the what's happening in Gaza. But, Roger, shall we move to what Jeremy Hunt's been saying, in particular his war on waste and woke in Whitehall? We've heard this before.
Yeah, it's just words. I mean, I still haven't seen anything concrete that he's going to do. Getting rid of policemen attending motorway car crashes and things like that, and replacing them with drones is just insane. You know, any commercial business, any commercial company would take a scheme like that and trial it in a small village for 6 months instead of rolling it out across the country and saving hundreds of millions of pounds.
Could you clarify just something on that then, Roger? So, as we understand it, one of Jeremy Hunt's ideas to save money is to send drones to car crashes and not actual police officers.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
I think this is another one of his, everything he does is smoke and mirrors, in my personal opinion. He announces the largest tax cuts since Lord knows when, and then when you look at the net effect in the audit statement, it's actually the largest increase in tax since 1948.
Yeah.
We have a 55 billion pound black hole that must be filled. More than half of it disappears 48 hours later. I'm going to be your prime minister, and corporation tax should be 12.5%. 3 months later, well, nobody wanted me, so now I'm chancellor, and corporation tax just has to be 25% right now, even though it's going to be passed on to consumers in the middle of a cost of living crisis 2 weeks later. I honestly just don't trust anything the man says.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. So when he's going to eliminate the police attending traffic accidents, which is just totally insane, but not surprising for a man who hasn't worked 24 hours in a financial business in his life, who's running the finances of this country.
Yeah.
And he says instead the police are going to deal with violent crimes and reduce it. Jezza, how? Can't you say something?
And John, you know, he does talk about diversity, equality and inclusion jobs. That is something that people think has gone completely over the top. There are too much of these roles in the civil service. They're often very expensive. That's something that could be a little bit of a vote winner if people believe he can change it.
Potentially, but ultimately, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge amount of money to play with. You know, even when you see some of these reports, you know, we're talking about, you know, an NHS that spends 140 billion, you know, it spends 500 million pounds every single day. And the reality for Jeremy Hunt is we're spending all this money, public services are still struggling, and in the long term, that just looks like it's going to get worse. And what we've not been able to do is shift money into long-term problem-solving investment. So a lot of this is just messing around the sidelines, trying to pick up a few votes, but really not solving the fundamental problems that the NHS and other public services have, and why voters are so dissatisfied with those. And you know, when we look overall at the polling, the biggest, you know, some of the biggest worries for voters are the state of public services, and in particular the state of the health service.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much indeed, John Oxley there, and of course Roger Govolb. Thank you very much for joining us.
Could I just say quickly, great point from Roger though, which is in no other line of work, when you look at somebody's CV, if they have zero experience for the job that they are applying for, would they get that job? But when it comes to running a great department of state, that doesn't matter, apparently. That's all right. That's OK. Yeah, have you got any idea of the banking sector or financial? No, none at all. Would you like to be Chancellor? Oh, fantastic. Anyway, moving on. It's British Music's Night of Nights. The 2024 Brit Music Awards took place last night, and it was singer-songwriter Ray who broke records and took home 6 awards.
You just don't understand what this means to me. Ugly crying on national television. I'm so proud of this album. I'm so proud of this album. I'm in love with music. All I ever wanted to be was an artist. And now I'm an artist with an album of the year!
You know what? She does seem genuinely happy and moved by winning those awards.
Yeah. Ecstatic.
You're going to make fun of her, but, you know, I'd be crying up there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think
Emoting.
So. I think so. Fair play. Well done to her. Well done to her. I mean, I'd be crying just counting the millions.
If you finally won an award.
Yeah, finally. Finally.
Right, joining us is showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy to tell us a little bit more. How were the speeches?
The speeches were good, actually. You know what? It was mostly Ray the whole night because she won 5 awards on the night. So every 10, 15 minutes, you knew Ray was going to come up. And each time she came up, actually, she did have a message for the industry because she's independent. 3 years ago, she was with Polydor, then she parted ways with them. Then she released her amazing album, debut album, 21st Century Blues, which was a massive success for her. And beyond the sale, she's been campaigning for independent artists to get the credit they deserve and monies because, you know, we're talking about the music business here. We're talking about royalties and, you know, a lot of these artists who are signed to labels, they are in horrible contracts.
Yeah.
And she's really shed a light on that and she's made a success. So she is an inspiration. And, you know, some of the awards she won last night, Song of the Year, R&B Act, Best New Artist, Album of the Year, Songwriter of the Year, you know, these have been voted by the Brits members. So, you know, it's not just that they're just giving it to her for the sake of it. It's they're giving her the credit where it's due. Another big person for the night yesterday was Kylie Minogue.
Yeah.
You've got to love a bit of Kylie. Over 40 years in the business and, you know, getting the Global Icon Award. She ended the show with a medley performance of all of her greatest hits. And again, Kylie paid kudos to Ray, but also she was reflecting on her own career and she says it's the fans that keep her going.
Imagine winning the Global Icon
Oh, gosh,
Award.
she is.
Imagine.
Can it get any better for showbiz?
It's a matter of time, Emily.
Who doesn't know Kylie? But, you know, last year there was a big furore at the Brits because they got rid of their gendered categories.
Yeah.
So, you know, women were suffering. But this year, 13 of the awards went to women.
Was it still
17
non-gendered then? They've
Still
kept it like that, but
non-gendered.
just pushed the
Well,
women.
That's what they've done. They've increased the category so it could become more inclusive, more diverse. If you ask my personal opinion, I miss the gendered categories because I feel it's nice for the women to have their moment and for the men to have the moment because, you know, as we've seen this year, where were the men?
Well, yeah, and also...
It's for Sam Smith, wasn't
didn't
it?
they only do this for Sam Smith?
Yes, and
Really?
really, Patrick, he is a minority. You know, feel free to, you know, see whatever you want to do in terms of gender, but he is only representing the minority, not the majority of the music industry.
I just can't believe just the arrogance to want to change something that's been around for how many years just because you're gender fluid or whatever.
The last time I saw Sam Smith, he was walking up and down a catwalk wearing what looked like a nappy.
Oh, yeah, please do we have that picture?
That was this weekend.
Holding a big wooden stick, looking like something out of a kind of, I don't know, very Camp Braveheart. Do you think, did we decimate the music industry for this?
Well, you know what? Times are changing, and unfortunately, the Brits have gone woke. But last night, it was an incredible show, so I'll give them that much. And there was a bit of politics as well, because we had Jo Hamilton, who was involved with the Post Office scandal, and she got on stage and she urged Rishi and co to hurry up the payments because people like herself are eligible for compensation up to $600,000 and they haven't seen a penny yet.
You know what? That's one of the good ones, actually, because normally, I mean, some of the award ceremonies, they end up coming on and talking
you can't
about...
say that's woke.
Talking about the, you know, the plight of a very specific Native American tribe or something. So we've ended up with the Post Office. That's quite good.
That's why it's the Brits.
Hey, there we are. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Really great.
Well, in other news, after taking the reins following the King's recent cancer diagnosis, Queen Camilla is set to take a little break, heading somewhere sunny, reportedly.
So it comes as online rumours continue to swirl around the Princess of Wales, though, who is still on leave following surgery earlier this month. So 2 big royal stories knocking about today. 3 if you include Prince Andrew.
Yeah, Prince Andrew too. Well, what should we start with? Joining us now is royal correspondent Michael Cole. Let's start with a spot of sunny holidays, why don't we? Queen Camilla needs a bit of a break. She's off somewhere. Any idea where she might be heading off to? What top destination?
Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Patrick. Here's the scoop. The Queen does not ring me up to ask where she should go on holiday. She's taking a break. She's 76, and she doesn't like long jet journeys, so that rather limits the possibilities. The Caribbean, I think that's 8 or 9 hours. I've only been about 4 or 5 times. I think it's about that time in the airplane. She will probably spend a lot of time down at Ray Mill, her house down in Wiltshire. where she's able to see her grandchildren and enjoy herself and relax. Of course, it would be difficult now with the king undergoing cancer treatment for cancer, to have children around him and anybody from outside the immediate family circle. So it's interesting, last week at the memorial service for the former King of Greece, Constantine II, she obviously took pride of place and was at the reception with half of the monarchy of Europe there. But she didn't stay very long. After about 15 minutes, she went away. Of course, it's a bit of a strain, but she's doing the job well, and she's had to step up because of the absence of her husband from direct public life. Of course, he's carrying on with his public duties, doing his red boxes and all the rest of it. But it's quite sensible for him to become apart from other people at most of the time.
Yes, so I think she deserves a little break, doesn't she? Can we just pivot now and talk about Catherine, please? Because there is speculation about how she is and exactly what the issue is. Kensington Palace released a statement earlier on, didn't they, I think, saying, look, just back off, basically. We've told you that she's ill. We've told you that she's recovering. Please stop speculating. I mean, the problem is that there is an unbelievable amount of speculation, especially on social media, some of it actually really distasteful as well. What do you make of the length of time it's taking Kate to get back on her feet?
Yeah, Patrick, of course, you're absolutely right. But I think it would be appropriate, and I think you would like it if I expressed our collective good wishes to the Princess of Wales for a prompt and speedy recovery. It's a bit of a difficult situation because there she is. She's a public person, but she's also a private woman. And this is very much her decision. Kensington Palace did issue a statement saying that she hoped that the public would understand, and I read this bit, her desire to maintain as much normality for her children as possible, and her wish that her personal medical information remains private. I think I can quite understand that she doesn't want her children going to school and some other kids saying to them in the playground, what's wrong with your mum? You know, what's happening with her? And if there are rumours in the paper, it could be very difficult. She's entitled to her privacy, and like any woman or like any person, about her medical history.
Yeah.
Now, you do remember, I'm sure, Emily, you remember, she had very, very severe morning sickness birth of her first child, Prince George. And afterwards, she's spoken about that and she's mentioned it. So she's not entirely coy about it, but quite clearly this is a private matter to her. Kensington Palace, for its part, when confronted by the worst of these rumours, has said they're ludicrous. I think the other one, total nonsense. And of course, the problem is that nature abhors a vacuum. When you get a news vacuum, it gets full of rubbish. And, you know, rumour is a lying
Michael,
jay.
may I just we're running out of time, Michael. I just want to say, front page of the Mirror, Andrew faces court bombshell, Epstein evidence to be made public by special decree.
Yeah, this is a matter which, frankly, I think Prince Andrew will never, ever put behind him. His disastrous friendship with the late and unlamented financier Jeffrey Epstein, the opprobrium of that will stick to him. And what is happening now, and Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, lately a presidential candidate for the Republican Party, he's getting involved in it. And women who were childhood victims of Epstein now are pushing very, very strongly to get released letters that Prince Andrew may or may not have written to the US government to get Epstein a sweetheart deal, a plea deal in 2008, when he could have gone to jail for his offences for 15 years, and he got away with 18 months, and he only spent less than a year in prison, and the rest of it at his mansion in Palm Beach. So if Prince Andrew did write the British government, to the American government, saying, please be soft and kind to my friend Jeffrey, then that's going to become public. And it's worth remembering that disastrous interview with Emily Maitlis, even then, Andrew said some complimentary things or said some positive things about Epstein. And what he didn't do, and this, I think, is unforgivable, she gave him the opportunity to apologise to those victims, and he didn't take them. And that was to his great discredit.
Yeah, Michael, look, thank you very, very much. Whizzing us through 3 big royal stories today. All the best to you, my good man. Take care. That is royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Yes, it is indeed. Well, we're going to be bringing you the very latest in all the papers. We're also going to be having that debate over £10,000 for every 30-year-old in the land.
Yes, so, look, get your emails coming in. Should every single 30-year-old be given 10 grand? Some people are saying this is a good idea now. Is that a good use of money, do you think? But
I think it's a resounding no so far in the inbox. But let's take a look at your weather.
It's raining money.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon. But for many, it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
Well, we were just discussing breakfast plans. Anyway, still to come, turning 30. How would you like to have £10,000 just wired to your bank account just for turning 30 years old? That could be the reality in a new proposal from a Tory peer, which is interesting.
Do you think they've maybe got a 30-year-old son or daughter now, and they're just like, go on, give them 10 grand? So we're going to be debating that next. Should we just give all 30-year-olds 10 grand? This is Breakfast on GB News.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners, and Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because You know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than it's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:28 in the morning. You're watching Breakfast with me, Emily and Patrick. Now, here's a rather novel idea. A new citizen's inheritance, where every 30-year-old would be just handed £10,000. Simple.
Yeah, the idea has been proposed by Conservative politician Lord David Willetts in a bid to combat deepening inequalities. So today, we are debating, should citizens' inheritance be introduced? Essentially, should every 30-year-old be given 10 grand? Okay?
Well, joining us now is businesswoman Geeta Sindhu Robb, who believes this is a good idea. And we have the financial market commentator David Bell, who thinks not. Well, there we go. Should we start with you, Geeta? So you think £10,000 into every 30-year-old's bank account would be a good way to combat intergenerational inequality?
I think the problem with looking at it as they're going to go straight off to Mallorca on holiday takes away from the fact that there is an issue here where house prices are ranging at 8 times your average salary. It is predicted that the average household in the United Kingdom is going to be £17,000 in debt by 2026. That's almost 1 year's salary there. And what we have to do is have this conversation about what can we do about it. There is a very real place where none of my children are going to be able to afford to buy a house. They're not really going to be able to afford it. Now, do I think we should throw 10 grand at 30-year-olds? Maybe at 30 you're old enough to think, oh, my God, I'm really never going to get out of rented accommodation. I'm never going to... It's not enough to earn money. It isn't. We know this. Now, today, it's not enough to earn money. You have to have an inheritance in order to be able to buy a house and survive, but you're not also inheriting that because people live longer. So you're going to inherit it at 65 or 70. What do you do in the interim? It is so expensive to buy a house and you can't afford a deposit. What do we do with all those things?
Well, there you go, David. £10,000 goes straight into the deposit. Bish, bash, bosh, more people on the housing ladder.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, my perspective is there's two ways to look at it. There's the aggregate level and then there's the individual level. As an individual, it's fantastic to receive 10 grand. On the aggregate level for the economy, what's going to happen is house prices are already elevated. Rent prices are going to increase because landlords know that renters now have a little bit more money. It's the same stuff that's happened over the pandemic where the money's entered the economy right into people's hands. And what happened? House prices went up. The stamp duty cut led to an 11% saving initially, but then house prices rose by 15% on average, 4% net increase. It's the same with everything. The inflation that we have or have had recently is a purely monetary phenomenon where too much money enters the economy versus not a subsequent rise in production of goods.
So essentially,
services.
this would just fuel inflation.
But I'll tell you what else it's fueling. I think it's fueling the old handout, crybaby attitude that a younger generation has had for so long. What on earth have 30-year-olds just done en masse to deserve 10 grand?
What have they done to deserve student debt?
Well, going to university.
Well, is that something we should fine? Should we fine people trying to get an education? Should we fine Britain actually becoming more educated, more employable? I don't really think so. So if we look at it as a bleeding heart concept, which I am definitely not a bleeding heart liberal, I'm a raging capitalist, but I think this is good for the economy. No, because I think it's important. I just think you've got to have somebody that comes from my background willing to argue this point. Because if we don't make it, most women, when you come out of a divorce, for example, which is happening younger and younger, the first year post-divorce are 41% worse off than the men they've gotten divorced from. They will take on the majority of childcare. Some of those people are 30. What are we doing to help people that are struggling to make ends meet? Give me another option that you're not going to call a bleeding heart.
No, I just...
Cut taxes.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Cut taxes on 30-year-olds. That would be good, wouldn't it, David?
Or to be fair, you make a good point, by the way. No, but you make a good point about the student loan side of things, because I would do something about that. I think we should be pushing more people to go and get a practical trade. This idea that the best way to go about it, that it's stigmatised if you're not at university, I find bonkers. But
yeah, like an apprentice scheme that we used to have. Let's have those again.
Yeah, look, David, I mean, is there not some thought here that this is just a bit of a stupid idea, that would people feel as though they just deserve things that they don't deserve?
Well, I think there is definitely a case of feeling hard done by. I think the issue is that a lot of people don't necessarily understand the actual functioning of the economy. And, you know, I don't blame them. It's very, very difficult to understand. How many people could, you know, let you know what the Bank of England have said at their latest monetary policy statement, for example? Not many. And so this is the issue. At the heart of it, we've got politicians that are sort of themselves quite misunderstood about the real top-level issues, and then that feeds down through to the economy. So we're looking at, you know, politicians who believe in first-order effects rather than second- and third-order effects here. And I think that is the real issue.
Well, a lot of people thinking about £10,000 for 30-year-olds, they think, why 30, firstly, and also, why not 50 or 60?
Could I just... I'll put this to you. So this has come through from Martin. We're getting a lot of emails about this. GBnews.com. Give all 30-year-olds 10K. Where was that when I was 30? I was told if you want anything, you have to work for it. He says, I had 2 jobs, so did my wife. We never had a holiday and did anything for years to buy a run-down old dump that we had to do all the repairs ourselves. He says it's a joke. Essentially, it's the old, they don't know they're born.
So now that man would today have to do all of that and have student debt and have to pay more. So what I'm saying is his money would not go as far. And so what you're almost talking about is trying to find a level playing field. It's attention grabbing and it sounds really stupid, but there is a place where actually people cannot afford to buy a home.
But there never has been a level playing field, has there, David? And it's not the case that all older people... a lot of older people are already giving their children more than £10,000 to try and get them on the housing ladder.
I think if you look back to the 1980s, though, the average affordability rate was about 4 times income. Now it's 8 to 12. If you're a woman in London, it's even higher, for example. So there's massive disparities. And this is a monetary phenomenon, again, as I've said. In the 80s, that's when we reached peak interest rates after the inflation of the 70s. Since then, it's just gone all the way down. And what that means is that something called the risk-free rate, there's a hurdle at which it means that getting involved in property just gives you a better long-term return. And we shouldn't be thinking of property necessarily as an investment. That is the issue. We should be thinking, and this is linked to the British ISA that we've just heard things spoken about in the last couple of days. There's just a level of stupidity here from politicians because they're wanting to ban tax incentives on overseas held shares. But the problem is that UK companies are rubbish to invest in. Really bad. You know, you get a great dividend yield, but that is not what investors need these days because we've been shifted so far along the risk curve, especially 30-year-olds.
I guess if things were as simple as, the taxpayer can just cough up £10,000 to every 30-year-old, then they'll all be able to get on the housing ladder, no one will be living in poverty, everyone will be A-OK, then we'd do it, fine. But obviously it's not as simple as that.
Can I just say, we're all assuming here that they're going to do something sensible with this money.
Yeah,
as well.
That's very true.
Saying they said they were going to go to Mallorca.
We're going to end up seeing a load of people on TikTok and on Twitter spending £30,000 on a few magnums of champagne and goodness knows what else at night.
And goodness knows what else.
Birkin is an investment. You can't buy a Birkin for £10,000, but you get a good rate of return on that.
Well, there we go.
Can you imagine? You get £10,000 from the government into your bank account and you go straight to Hermes and buy yourself a £10,000 handbag.
You have a deposit for a house.
I mean, crazy.
Increase in value.
Well,
crazy.
I suppose. There we go. Well, look, both of you, thank you very much. It has got the inbox absolutely raging this. My youngest son is 30, bought his brand new home 2 years ago. Both of my children have their own homes. I thought that Felix, I'll be honest with you, I thought there was going to be a point to that, but actually you're just showing off.
And Doug says, good idea.
No point there at all, Felix. Just going, yeah, we're doing really well.
Doug says, good idea. Use the illegal immigration money. Well, there we go. We did find out that it's costing us £15 million a day for hotel accommodation. So there you go.
Oh, lovely. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for getting in touch. We've got a lot to go out there with the emails as well. So keep them coming in. But still to come, Aidan McGee is with you as well. He's going to be whizzing you through all the latest sports stories. And there's rather a lot on today, including a Manchester derby, isn't there? That's next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and to not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:40 in the morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Patrick Christys and me, Emily Carver. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch about that debate we just had. Bill says, no, and no. I started working at 15. My wage was £3 for a whole week. Really? £3 for a whole week? Goodness me, that's not a lot of money, is it?
This is about the story to just randomly give 10 grand to 30-year-olds. A lot of people getting in touch, like Carolyn, saying, what about the WASPy ladies? Yeah, exactly. Where's all this money coming from? I mean, all of a sudden it turns out we can give everyone under 30 10 grand. If they don't want student loans, don't go to university, says Mark. Yeah, again, going to do a Mickey Mouse course like underwater basket weaving at Bath Spa University, you know.
To be fair, some people are now coming out of university with like £50,000, £60,000 that they'll probably never even end up paying off if they don't get a very well-paid job. Dave says, great idea, as long as it's backdated for everyone over 30. I love the UK free money tree. Yes, if only there was one.
Well, something I'm not particularly loving is the fact that we're about to have a Manchester derby and the team that we support is not doing very well. But here to go through all the sports, here's broadcaster Aidan McGee.
Good morning to you both again. How are you?
Good.
Very well.
Same as we were last hour, I suppose.
Yeah, not a lot's changed.
I want to touch on Nottingham Forest, first of all, and Liverpool. because we did Man United a bit last hour. We'll touch on them again, but big moment yesterday. Liverpool go to Nottingham Forest. They don't travel there that well over the years. Historically, they get the winning goal 9 minutes into added time. Now, it's controversial. You know this etiquette in football where, and it's in other sports as well, where if you kick the ball out because an opponent is going to have treatment, you tend to give the ball back to the original. Those in possession of the ball in the first place. That didn't happen yesterday. The game was stopped. Nottingham Forest were in possession of the ball. Late in the game, as I say, 9 minutes into added time, the game is stopped because of an injury to Ibrahima Konaté, the Liverpool defender. Liverpool should really have returned the ball, possession to Nottingham Forest. They didn't. They went down the other end of the pitch. Darwin Núñez wins the game. Crucial, as a result, at the top of the table and at the bottom, where Nottingham Forest are concerned. Liverpool are now, 63 points. Man City can catch them later on if they beat Manchester United. It's interesting because Nottingham Forest appointed their own referees advisor earlier in the season. He's Mark Clattenburg. He's the Premier League referee. It's a bit controversial. And so I think his job is to put pressure on the referee who's refereeing on the day. And it's a brainchild of the chairman, Evangelos Marinakis, who has apparently used this in Greek football. So it's a little bit controversial. But the players and the coach went chasing the players down the tunnel yesterday. Marinakis was saying, have some respect for the players. Clattenburg comes out afterwards as an employee of Nottingham Forest, saying the referee got it wrong. I mean, some would say they got their comeuppance for kind of trying to put pressure on referees. Nonetheless, it keeps Liverpool at the top of the table. And it looks like a thrilling title race. It's a three-way thing. City playing today, obviously, Arsenal tomorrow. All we want as fans, I've said it week after week, is we want a title race. We don't want it to be processional.
Absolutely, yeah. Unlike Formula One, of course, which appears to be... the most exciting stuff is what's going on in the
love lives.
In the love lives of some of the people, not even the drivers. I mean, Formula One has fallen, hasn't it? It always used to be about gin and tonics and chain smoking and women and the Playboy lifestyle, and now we've got a bloke who runs a Formula One team.
But he's not even a driver.
He's not even a driver.
He's the most interesting bloke.
Well, it's probably because he's married to a Spice Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're always a Spice Girl, by the way.
You're always a Spice Girl.
I learnt that in the last hour.
But
you are always a Spice Girl.
Yeah, they showed a good display of unity yesterday, Christian Horner and Jerry Halliwell. But if we look at what happened on the track, because it was opening day yesterday, we should touch on it. As you say, Max Verstappen, processional, just everything we don't want the Premier League to be, everything it's been in for the last couple of seasons with Manchester City going for the title. Max Verstappen winning it at Cannes once again. He won 22 out of 23 races last year, Patrick. And that's why I think this thing with Christian Horner is so interesting, because what's going on the track isn't captivating people right now. If you can get a little bit of a salacious story going on away from the track, don't be surprised if people grasp onto it, because, as you say, F1 represented something very different. It was all about fast cars, it was all about women, it was all about excess and everything, and we don't see that.
Stop banging on about the women. Do you mean the Formula One track girls?
Yeah, track. Do they have them anymore?
No, they got banned, didn't they? Because it's not. It's not very. It's sexist.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Although I heard that they actually enjoyed it, but there you go.
Yeah, probably. But then there's the Netflix documentary as well called Drive to Survive. I think that was a little bit of a subplot as well that really helped the narrative. I remember when Tottenham had Amazon cameras on them for a season or so. Yeah. It was good because Jose Mourinho got sacked and he had something to feed into the story.
Can I just ask you the predicted scoreline, please, for Manchester United versus Manchester City?
Oh, yes.
I think it's going to be 3-1 to Manchester City.
OK.
OK. Well, that's something to look forward to.
Won't be seeing Aidan McGee again. No, thank you very much, mate. Cheers. We'll see you soon.
Well, still to come. We've got lots more coming up. It's Making the News with Georgie Frost and Emma Wolf. We've got a lot to get into on the front pages and inside the papers too.
Yes.
Next.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Sadiq Khan, 6.3 million on a virtue signal, load of lines. Why is he spending the people's money in this way? And why is nobody saying anything? I want to hear from Suzanne Hall, the potential Conservative candidate, or Howard Cox, the potential Reform candidate who could potentially take this off Sadiq Khan. Why are they not speaking? This is ridiculous.
Well, it was sprung on everybody. Did you know about that?
I didn't know about it.
Nobody knows. So they're spending this money. They're spending £6.3 million, and no one knew about it. Where's the press? Where are the public consultations? No one knew. I think it's a good idea to rename the train lines, because all these train lines are there are like 4 of them, 6 of them, whatever, and they're all going all these different directions. And you tell someone to come, and you don't even know the name.
Yeah, but 6.3 million. Listen, if you want to give me 6.3 million to come up with some virtue signalling lines, I'd like to know which advertising agency he employed to do this, how long it took him, and why he's even done it in the first place. Why has he done this?
He has done this with the virtue signalling because he's part of T-World. He's Rishi Sunak. It's this whole concept is every inclusiveness. There is no country. Nobody's English. Our own history is bad. Not my history, but whatever. The English history is bad. And it's a denial of history. It's Orwellian or something. Yeah. Not that I know about.
I think it's an absolute absurdity that Sadiq Khan should be doing that. He's got a knife crime epidemic, a crime epidemic, people stealing watches off people walking down the street.
Yes.
You've got the burglary at an all-time high. London, a lot of people are put off by it. And this is what he spent £6.3 million on.
This could have been a bit
to speak as to why.
He doesn't need to speak. People need to speak out and say, well, why didn't we know about this? But the idea, can I say something to you, Nana? The idea is right. It's like, for example, take the Northern Line. You know, there are 6 Northern Lines.
6 Northern Lines.
6 different Northern Lines, maybe more now, because one goes from Mill Hill East to Mill Hill.
This was the overground he was...
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to GB News Breakfast with me, Patrick, and Emily.
Well, joining us to go through what's making the news today is consumer affairs expert Georgie Frost and the writer and columnist Emma Wolf. All right, well, the Post Office is back on the front pages, isn't it, Emma? Post Office boss said he would quit unless he got £1 million. What's this?
No, he says he didn't try to resign. He's been talking to the Select Committee. This is the grubby Horizon scandal story, which just gets more and more grubby. Nick Reed, the chief executive of the Post Office, saying, no, I didn't try to resign, but I did threaten to resign if I wasn't paid over £1 million in pay and perks and bonuses.
How much was he getting paid?
Retention, he was on nearly 600,000, which was not quite enough. And, yeah, I mean, look, it's clear there was plenty of money for the big guys and not very much money at all for the little guys. And what I'd like to remember is that there are 251 postmasters and postmistresses who have died without receiving any compensation or even an apology, a clearing of their name. Those people died with shame, with guilt, with their lives destroyed. These are local people, for the most part. Postmasters and postmistresses are local. These are small, family-run businesses in towns and villages. This isn't the big stuff. And I just think everybody in this, it looks more and more guilty. Even Henry Staunton, who last week we thought was, becoming a bit of a hero, and he and Kemi Badenoch were ripping strips off each other. That was quite exciting, wasn't it? Even Henry Staunton has apparently been lobbying for this guy, bothering everybody for this guy, Nick Reed, to get his £1 million.
Shameful, isn't it?
Shameful. It is. Can I just move it on, Georgie, and just talk a little bit about tax cuts or lose the grey vote? So what's being said here?
Yeah, look, this is about, obviously the Tories' main demographic of voters, I imagine, a slightly older one would suggest. The cuts that we got to national insurance, of course, won't affect those over 65 who don't pay national insurance. So they're calling for a tax to income tax because you do, which a lot of people don't, think about is you actually do pay income tax on your pension.
Yeah.
And of course, as we keep having this triple lock, we do keep getting bumper pay rises to the state pension. You're getting very close to the threshold at which we start paying tax because it's been frozen for so long. So what I would suggest is rather than perhaps digging down round the back of the sofa and trying to cut 1p here, 2p here to income tax, get rid of these frozen thresholds. They're a stealth tax and it's just, I can't bear it. So get rid of those and that might help the retired. But yes, that's what they're suggesting.
Yes.
Cut tax or lose the grey vote.
It's quite amazing how many people have been dragged into the higher tax brackets, people who wouldn't consider themselves to be rich.
I think it's going to take more than this. I mean, like we've said, with all the kind of financial fiddling and the backs of the sofa thing this morning, it's going to take more than this to shift the polls. The polls for Rishi Sunak, for the Tories, are not moving.
No.
I don't know what's going to shift them.
There's a sense of just getting no value for money, though, isn't there? I mean, we've got the highest tax burden since World War II. So many people, as Emily was saying there, are getting dragged into this higher tax bracket. And you look around and you think, the NHS is knackered.
And still, broken Britain. Still trains don't work. Still, hospitals don't work. Still, schools aren't working.
Now is not the time for little cuts here and there to income tax, etc. The Conservatives not only have to think about whether they're going to win election, think about trying to bring the tax burden down, their reputation as economically responsible, which has slightly been trashed, I think, over the last particularly few years. Now is not the budget. There are plenty of things that we have in our tax system, the ridiculous 60% tax over 100,000, child benefit if you earn over 50,000. All of these things need to be looked at, need to be sorted out, and this sort of a bit here, a bit there, and the hope that we will feel this benefit by the time some election comes, whenever that might be, is very unlikely. I agree with Emma. I don't know what be done.
Our tax code is apparently, longer than the Bible or longer than 60,000 pages or something ridiculous. Simplifying that might be a nice thing to do, but that's wishful thinking.
Emma, we were talking about where's our money going? What are we paying for? Crucially, who are we paying for? And there is a story in The Sun today, Emma, isn't there, about the number of small boat migrants coming to Britain since 2018?
I thought you'd like this one, Patrick. Yes. Apparently, in the last 5 years, there's been more migrants crossing over onto our UK shores than the total population of Dover. This is over, well, it's 577 people that we know of, but I would suggest there might be a few more than that. Labour, Stephen Kinnock for Labour, have been calling it a shocking indictment of Conservative failure over smuggling groups coming into our borders. And remember, this is one of Rishi's key pledges, stop the boat. He was going to smash the small boats model. So we have utterly poor, we have insecure borders, we have these people traffickers, we have illegal migrants coming over on dinghies, and a total failure to deport people. When you find that people are people traffickers, smugglers, is another story across the papers, why can't we get rid of them?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, didn't you, about how they're not particularly economically competent at the moment. The tax burden's very high and don't seem to be particularly good about the borders either.
Security is supposed to be the other one, of course. Look, I just wish the narrative around this would change. The people smugglers that are involved in this are criminals, are terrible, terrible, exploitative criminals who are happy to take money and risk people's lives to go across the channel. Can we please focus on that rather than this, people coming to this country attitude? Then the Conservatives, I think, would have a really justifiable reason and support for this.
That's what Keir Starmer says. Smash the gangs. Whether he'll be able to do so is another question, if, of course, he does win. That's all from our news makers, our pay-per-view, but it's going to go to your weather just now, quickly. Yes.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon. But for many, it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures Well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, any showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below, freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas that had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of March.
Yes, this is Breakfast with Patrick Christie's and Emily Carver.
Welcome along. Now, just a day after the Prime Minister's threat to democracy warning, pro-Palestinian protesters have taken to the streets again as senior MPs raise the alarm now over rising extremism.
And Jeremy Hunt set to go to war over woke Whitehall waste as he continues to tease the prospect of tax cuts in Wednesday's budget.
And it was a record-breaking Brit Awards because singer Ray, no, me neither, takes 6 gongs and Kylie Minogue crowned global icon. But we will be debating this hour whether the awards are actually relevant. Should they be having gender-neutral awards?
And after holding the fort over the past weeks, Queen Camilla is set to take a little break. So who will be leading the royals and where could she be off to?
Good morning. Red Bull chief Christian Horner maintains a show of defiance in the face of the storm alongside wife Geri Halliwell at the Bahrain Grand Prix. A controversial refereeing decision, meanwhile, helped keep Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. And we look ahead with Patrick to the Manchester derby at the Etihad this afternoon.
It's a frosty, foggy start in places this morning, but it should brighten up. Plenty of sunny spells across the country. Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
Yes, well, look, only a day after the Prime Minister called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protesters, thousands have taken part again in a pro-Palestine protest across the country. There were actually 12 arrests this time following a failure to disperse order.
Interesting. It comes today as further warnings emerge over extremism in the UK. The Daily Mail is reporting today that Britain's terror threat is at its highest level since 9/11 and that the war in Gaza has, well, become a bit of a recruitment ground for more extremism.
Yeah, while in the same paper, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has exposed the, in his view, cosy relationship between the left and extremism. There's also quite a bit about today about hate preachers, radical preachers, and the abilities or lack of that we have when it comes to deporting them. So quite a few stories under that kind of extremism umbrella for our next guest, political editor of the HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield's picked through. Kevin, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Yeah, multiple different reports today pointing out the level of extremism that people think that we are undergoing at the moment, saying that, you know, we are now going to have to do something about it. How do you feel about what's going on the streets at the moment? How do you think our politicians are reacting to it?
Well, it was quite dramatic, wasn't it, on Friday evening when the Prime Minister chose to make that statement on the steps of Downing Street. Very unusual for a Prime Minister to do that, not least on a Friday evening when most people's thoughts are turning to the weekend. But he now has to follow that up with solid action. There was a lot of warm words. He was pretty good at identifying the problem, but I thought the speech itself was lacking in much substance and detail as to what the government is going to do about it. So yeah, as I say, he has to follow that up now with concrete proposals. Now, he's talked about helping the police, encouraging them to get tougher on marches and on protests. Maybe a bit more money for the Prevent programme to prevent young people becoming radicalised. But it was pretty small beer, really, considering the dramatic nature of the speech. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what he has in store over the next few weeks.
I mean, Kevin, in the Mail today, Robert Jenrick has written quite a long piece about... He sees there's a bit of an unholy alliance between the far left and Islamist extremists. What do you make of that?
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that Robert Jenrick is putting himself forward again. Although he's no longer Immigration Minister, no longer in government, he certainly hasn't gone quietly. I think he's probably got an eye on what comes after the election in terms of the Conservative leadership campaign. Now, this has obviously been crystallised, I think, as well by George Galloway winning the Rochdale by-election. I think that was one of the final triggers, really, for Rishi Sunak making that speech on Friday evening. But again, I come back to this point, you know, the Conservatives have been in power now for 14 years. It's not as if this has just come out of the bright blue sky. So I think people will justifiably now be thinking, right, OK, Prime Minister, you've made the speech, you've said what the problem is as you see it. Now, what are you going to come forward with?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to return to this topic a little bit later on with our next guest. I think an important point is he makes there are stronger laws, this is his quote, there are stronger laws against football fans than extremists wanting jihad, is what he says there. And it comes down to a question of enforcement and whether or not people feel too afraid or, you know, too worried to confront these things head on, fear of being called Islamophobic, for example, fear of actually finding out what's going on in some mosques with radical hate preachers. But we'll park the jihadi terror stuff with you there for now, Kevin, and maybe talk a little bit more about the budget and the financial side of things. Jeremy Hunt under quite massive pressure to cut tax. If you read at the front of the Observer today, they're saying that will be an absolute disaster. But he's really plotting a a raid on woke Whitehall, isn't he? What do we think this means?
Yeah, so the story that they've trailed the Treasury into today is an extra £800 million for the NHS and for police to use things like AI to improve productivity. Now, they say that will, by 2029, free up something like £1.8 billion in productivity savings. Now, I mean, that's pretty small beer, really, when you consider the overall size of the government budget. The main thing that we're looking for in the statement on Wednesday is how much Jeremy Hunt is going to cut tax. Now, this has been widely trailed for weeks and weeks. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, I think. The Treasury have been talking about big tax cuts. Then they've been talking about, well, actually, we don't have as much money as we thought we would, so maybe we're not going to be able to cut tax as much as possible. There's stories in the paper this morning about Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt getting together tonight to try and find money elsewhere in order to bring forward these tax cuts, because there's no doubt they're under an awful lot of pressure from Conservative MPs who think basically they're in the last chance saloon. This is the one big opportunity that the government has to try and turn around the narrative and get the Conservatives back in the game, and they think that big tax cuts, maybe 2p off income tax, might do it. It remains to be seen, though, whether they can find the money to actually afford it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kevin. Kevin Schofield there, political editor of the HuffPost UK. Patrick, do you think that a tax cut here and there would be enough to turn around the Conservatives' fortunes?
No, I don't think it is. I also think that's partly because of the bloke who's looking to deliver these tax cuts. I mean, the amount of times I do on my normal show 9 to 11 p.m. every single evening, you should be giving it a watch, actually.
I'm on 12 till 3.
Midweek, that is. But every single day when I do the papers there, towards the end of that show, there's usually something about Jeremy Hunt flirting with the idea of tax cuts. And then he rose back on it. And he rose back on it because he's too afraid of stuff like this.
Because of economists.
Because people warn him, oh, no, it would be a disaster. He's too afraid of somebody saying, well, I can't believe that you're cutting the taxes for the rich while we have people going to food banks. Now, I can understand that might grate with people a little bit, but it's not quite as simple as that, is it, actually? And maybe if they were less afraid of offending those people, it's this culture of offence.
But, I mean, he'll be looking at what happened to Liz Truss, though. He'll be looking at that and thinking, I certainly do not want to go down that path. I've got to be Mr. Sensible, which can mean Mr. Boring.
Yeah, but
he wants to be Mr. Sensible, doesn't he?
It also means Mr. Careerist, all right?
Yeah, that too.
I, by the way, remain resolutely unconvinced that Jeremy Hunt is actually going to stand at the next general election. He says he is, OK? I remain unconvinced that he will be.
I think good prime ministers need to take risks, good chancellors need to take risks.
Yeah.
You can't make improvements without causing a little bit of controversy with what you do.
I mean, who's he listening to as well? You know, Jeremy Hunt, does he look like a guy that gets out much to you? Do you think? Seriously?
Don't attack him personally.
I'm not attacking him personally, but I think more politicians should be shaped by what they see around them.
Yeah, true.
Does Jeremy Hunt strike you as a man who's really got his finger on the pulse of the nation and ordinary people? Maybe he does. If he does, great, fantastic. If he doesn't, then I would question why this particular individual, who has got absolutely zero financial experience, by the way, has been given the purse strings to our nation.
Well, we often talk about the old GDP scam, that GDP gets bigger if you boost the population. Of course it does. But that per capita, that quality of life measure for people isn't looking so good, is it?
This is the other thing. I mean,
we're falling down the leaderboard when it comes to that.
But I spoke... Robert Jenrick's all over the press today, the former immigration minister. I did an interview with him a few weeks ago, just in the wake of his resignation, for GB News. A couple of things that he told me just outside of the interview, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, is when he was sat around the cabinet table and legal immigration figures were coming in, 600,000, 700,000, and he was saying, look, this is bad. This is bad. It's essentially a giant immigration Ponzi scheme that we're living in now, and the public don't really want this. And he just said, look, there was basically zero appetite around the cabinet table to do anything about that.
Hearing that he's going to be on Camilla Tominey's show at about 9:30, so I'm sure he'll be talking about what he's written in the Mail on Sunday. But you know what? Robert Jenrick says a lot of very sensible things that people need to hear. But it's a shame that he's not actually in the Home Office to sort it out, is it? But perhaps he influences in this way.
One of the big issues with this is there was a period of time where we had Suella Braverman as Home Secretary and Robert Jenrick as Immigration Minister. And if they were saying anything like the kinds of things behind the scenes that they've since been saying once they've either been sacked or resigned from their positions, and they still couldn't get anything done, that does, for me, raise serious question marks over how anything is going to get done.
Well, there's just so much inertia, isn't there, in Whitehall, in our civil service. Everything takes so long to do.
But it ties into our next topic.
And this is a massive course correction that's needed to take place. But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. It ties into this because this is the concerns over extremism in the UK. And we want to take a little look at yesterday's protests in London, the police reaction as well. We're joined by the host of Protect and Serve podcast, former police officer, is Oliver Lawrence. Oliver, thank you very, very much. What did you make of Rishi Sunak saying it's the police's job not to manage these protests, but to actually police them?
Yeah, it's one thing to say that by Mr. Sunak. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Patrick. But in terms of supporting our police, he said he'd support them all the way. And I wonder whether that will include funding if they ever have to be represented in an IOPC hearing. You know, our police do a tremendous job. I did see the article in The Guardian in relation to a legal observer who was knocked over by police. That's obviously made front pages and everyone's having a huge hissy fit that there's an increase in aggression by police. And I suppose the irony is that the lady that fell over was a legal observer there to watch the police. You know, public order matters are incredibly complex. Hundreds of thousands of people attending over a number of weekends. And you know, the police have handled these matters incredibly professionally over a number of weeks with very little incidents.
I mean, The Guardian has focused on that, on the idea of police aggression at these protests. But I do think for the majority of people, they're more concerned about the aggression of some protesters. Yeah. I don't think the issue of police aggression has been a massive one, not that I've seen anyway, when it comes to this. They're far more aggressive when it comes to other types of protesters and football fans, for example.
People think they haven't been aggressive enough.
Well, I think the other thing was in the Times we saw an article where former Deputy Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu said if we were to end these peaceful protests, that we'd likely increase the threat of terror attacks on our city. You know, these are supposed to be very pleasant and quiet and peaceful protests, but clearly there is a worry amongst former senior police leaders and people within the counter-terrorism community that there are elements within these protests which are ones that we should all be incredibly worried about. So there is a broader challenge here for policing to understand when it intervenes, when it can shut down, and what are the risks to the community if it was to take action.
Yeah, things have changed as well because everyone's got a camera on their phone these days. There's huge amounts of CCTV. And there's a lot of people, you know, ready and waiting there for any kind of police officer who's maybe been a bit too trigger-happy with the baton or, dare I say it, the taser as well. And I can absolutely understand that that must put a huge amount of pressure on police officers. You then add on to it the other connotations, certainly when it comes to Gaza or certainly when it comes to some of the characters that we've had on these marches, people calling for jihad, etc. You add the religious dimension into that and the added threat of being called an Islamophobe or something, and it can become very messy very quickly. Do you think police have been held back in their handling of these protests? Because if you go in hard on people who are calling for jihad, etc., you become an Islamophobe. If you go in hard on football hooligans, that's all right.
I think the challenge has been over the last few months is the sheer scale of these protests, hundreds of thousands of people hitting the streets of London. And really, quite honestly, you're not going to arrest your way out of these issues. You're not going to be able to shut them down because we just don't have the police resources to place into custody hundreds of thousands of people who need to be processed for various different offences. I think the police were slow off the mark in terms of policing in the initial stages. Some of the most abhorrent boards and banners that we saw, totally anti-Semitic commentary from people within those protest groups. I think we've seen over recent weeks a change in that dynamic. Quite clearly, the messaging has changed and there's been a greater level of confidence from police gold commanders running these large operations to instruct their officers to take a zero tolerance approach and intervene where they can identify offences. And then obviously after the event, we've seen a number of public announcements and pictures of individuals that have gone out seeking public assistance in identifying people. But then you've got a criminal justice system, which has then got to back up the police. You know, if they find these people and identify who they are and they charge them with counter-terror offences, we're seeing individuals like those two young ladies with the paragliders on the back of their backs getting whole suspended sentence. You know, if we want a police service to be effective, we also want a criminal justice system which is also effective and zero tolerance and put these people into our prisons.
That's a very good point. There's not much point in the government getting tough when it comes to legislation if then it's not enforced in the courts either, really, with any kind of penalty.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the thing. And actually, we said there about, oh, you know, are they going to be tighter on football hooligans or football fans than they are about jihadis? I mean, actually, the judge who was in that case that you referred to there was harder on police than he was about people who were convicted of a terror offence. That was one of the quotes that he'd come out with, doing talks around America saying, oh, you know, I prosecuted these police officers, I sent them to prison. And you've got people with the old jihadi paragliders on their back and they seem to be getting away.
But also, Oliver, just lastly, you talk about how, you know, it's difficult to police these protests, and of course it is, and it's hard to manage from a police perspective and also from the government's perspective too. But, I mean, other European countries have taken a much more hardline approach in terms of policing these protests, going as far as to ban some of them. I believe in Germany and France, they've cracked down on this far more. If they can, I mean, surely our government could. I mean, they're talking the talk, aren't they?
Well, I think it just goes to show, Emily, how tolerant of a policing service we have and how tolerant we are as a society. You know, if any of these people were to step across the borders of France and Germany, they'd certainly teach them what policing is all about in terms of policing antisocial behaviour and public protests, you know. So to have a crack at police at the moment is fashionable. And obviously the incident we saw, you know, last weekend with a lady falling over, we don't want anyone getting hurt at these events. That's obviously to be expected. But, you know, our police here in London are incredibly professional, incredibly tolerant, probably sometimes too tolerant on occasions. And as you quite rightly point out, when one reflects on the policing capabilities and the output of the Europeans, there is often a stark contrast. And whether we want that or not is another topic, but it's certainly interesting to see.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because some people will want one protest clamped down on, others will want a different protest clamped down on. Yeah. Difficult.
I mean, the words water cannons keep coming up in the inbox whenever we talk about things like this, and I am not surprised.
Do they?
Oliver, thank you very much. Oliver Loris, former police officer. Can I just say, just very quickly on this as well, you know, we had the Rochdale by-election recently, and at that by-election, we had Sam Coates from Sky News being tasked with interviewing George Galloway, and George Galloway served him his backside on a plate, OK, during which there was about 10 or 12 middle-aged women, from what I could see, and a couple of blokes, saying the odd thing like free Palestine, free Palestine.
Yeah.
Then Sky News climb all over it and go, oh, my gosh, Sam Coates, it was like reporting from a war zone. I've never seen anything like this at a by-election before. And you think...
Never known this type of intimidation.
Oh, my gosh.
And then we were thinking of Patrick Christie's out in Westminster amidst the mob.
Go to the marches. Just go to the marches. And then they're the same people who slam Suella Braverman and people like that for going, their rhetoric is so extreme. They're calling them hate marches. You couldn't even hack it at a by-election with a load of people who are in their mid-40s saying things like, oh, free Palestine, interviewing a politician. Do you understand the reality of what's going out on the streets? Anyway, that's run over with.
Yes, it wasn't the most intimidation I've ever seen of a journalist, but there you go. Sam got lots of praise, Sam Coates from the lovely Sky. Right, well, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
The US military has carried out its first airdrop of aid into Gaza. The operation, carried out jointly with Jordan's Air Force, comes after the deaths of Palestinians queuing for food brought renewed attention to the growing humanitarian catastrophe, and President Biden says that he hopes to see a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March.
Yes, Queen Camilla is set to take a break from official duties after leading the monarchy in the public since the King's cancer diagnosis. It's understood she'll spend a few days of private downtime with the King and her own family. Her Majesty will resume engagements on the 11th of March when she'll represent the King and lead the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey.
And a 2020 election rematch is looking more likely as former President Donald Trump won 3 more Republican primaries overnight: Missouri, Michigan and Idaho. Mr. Trump's only rival, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, is still searching for her first win, trailing second behind Trump in every state. Well, there's still loads more to come because we're going to be giving you a little bit of an update on the Royals, aren't we? We're going to be giving you a little bit of a sports update as well. So
I thought that former police officer, Oliver Lawrence, was very well informed on all the different, you know, all the different angles on all of these stories, really.
For all the talk of us being an intolerant society, some of the, well, almost all, actually, of the issues that we face at the moment are only a problem because of how tolerant we are and have been. That would be my view. But I just want to tease ahead a little bit now.
Go on, then.
To a debate that we're going to be having.
Oh, yes.
So get your emails ready, all right? We had a massive response to the one in the last hour about whether or not all 30-year-olds should be given 10 grand. This one is about whether or not there should be genderless categories at awards like the Brits. So gender-neutral categories and awards like the Brits? Do you think it's a good thing, or was it just done to keep Sam Smith happy?
Because there was quite a lot of controversy, because last year, when they had this genderless category, all the men won. So then the women didn't get a look in, and now, surprise, surprise, lots of women have very much had a look in. So instead of just having men and women categories, like the good old-fashioned days, eh?
Yeah.
The good old days.
Well, the days when we stuck to biological fact.
We've now got non-binary categories or whatever.
Oh, well. Anyway,
Binary-less.
get your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. We're going to be having a good debate on that, but right now, it is your weather with Greg.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon. But for many, it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
Welcome back. Yes, that was your weather. Now, on Wednesday evening, GB News will be doing a budget special, won't we, from Whitehaven?
Where we'll be dissecting Jeremy Hunt's spring budget in all its glorious detail, I'm sure. You can be part of the audience, as Michelle Dewberry and Nigel Farage will broadcast their shows live. You've just got to head to gbnews.com, scan a QR code. We're going to join, if you want to join, Nigel and Michelle. Well, there's the QR code.
Nigel's wearing it.
Nigel is wearing it. And doesn't he look great? Well, there it is on the screen for you. You just scan that with your phone and it'll take you straight to the website where you can sign up and you could be in the audience.
You too could spend an evening in Whitehaven with Michelle Dewberry and Nigel Farage. It really is the stuff of dreams, people.
Yes, it is actually, Patrick.
I think, I meant it seriously. You meant it seriously. Absolutely. Whitehaven Man, an important aspect of Whitehaven is that, you know, Whitehaven Man was the target, apparently, for the 2019 general election. That was, you know, when they said, if we can appeal to a Whitehaven man, then we'll win. They did appeal to Whitehaven man, and they won.
The Liberal Democrats are trying to go after the Waitrose woman.
Oh, that sounds threatening.
They're not doing very well, though.
Sounds threatening. You shouldn't do things like that to women in Waitrose. Just disgusting for the Liberal Democrats yet again. Still to come. This is, of course, GB News Breakfast, and we've got a lot coming your way, so make sure that you stay tuned. Should we be having gender-neutral categories at awards?
Don't go anywhere.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kellie J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kellie J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kellie J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say
they
that,
won't.
will they?
They
Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's 8:27. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Patrick and Emily.
So, it's British music's night of nights, apparently. And last night's big winner was singer-songwriter Ray, who broke a record, scooping up 6 awards.
Pretty good going. But the Brits have drawn ire for other reasons in recent years. They now have genderless categories. You made me laugh with your facial expressions.
Drawn ire. They've drawn ire. I'm so...
I like that phrase.
Yeah. Anyway, so this morning we are debating whether there is any relevancy to Brits anymore. Look, should we be having gender-neutral categories? OK? That's what I want to know. Should we be having the gender-neutral categories?
Well, I don't think so myself, but joining us now is showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips and the political commentator Femi Nylander. Thank you very much for joining us both. Ellie, we could talk about the relevance of the Brits. We particularly want to ask you whether it's been a mistake to have genderless categories.
Yeah, personally, I think it is. I don't think it's necessary. I think it takes away predominantly from women and women's spaces. This year, obviously, you mentioned Ray, and she did really, really well, but we don't know how, moving forward, how that's going to be. Women in general in the music industry struggle to get the recognition, to get the exposure, and even to get nominated for awards. So I think it does a disservice to women. To put that in context, less than 20% of acts signed to UK labels are women. And behind the scenes, it's a boys' club in the music industry. If you looked at the Brit Awards last night and you looked at the audience, people were like, why are there so many men in suits here? What the hell, you know? And it's because they run the music industry still. And, you know, look at Ray, who has done incredibly well to overcome what she's overcome to get there. Has been her battling against men to get there. So she really, really deserved that space. But how many more women are out there? And even when you look at the nominees, to have a category that's Female Artist of the Year, I think even if you're nominated for that, it's such a huge recognition, it's such a huge accomplishment. Even if by making it a gender-neutral category and doubling the number of nominees, if you take away space from one woman, that's one space too many, in my opinion.
OK. All right, Femi, what's your view on the old gender-neutral categories, then?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that this year, as you say, it was kind of men that kind of ended up being nominated for the General Neutral Award. I don't think it's quite equivalent to, for example, in sports or something like that, because at the end of the day, there's no, like, if I'm singing or if I'm acting, biology doesn't play any kind of role whatsoever. Yeah. It's just me moving my face and making sounds. But I do understand that in the same way, in the same way, the award ceremonies are representative of our society, and they're all boys' clubs. And so, if you have these kind of these spaces where you don't single out kind of, okay, these certain people are going to get nominated, then you end up having people just awarding things to their mates, awarding things to whoever, and we know that this is how British society at large works, not just award ceremonies. So personally, I don't think anything's wrong with us moving away from, and we always like to say, oh, the Muslim world, this women, but at the same time, we kind of essentialize ideas about what men should be here, and we essentialize ideas about what women should be here. I don't think there's anything wrong with us kind of moving away from from those general ideas. But at the end of the day, this is a spectacle. It's an awards show. It's not really the most important thing. If we're going to have discussions about how to define a woman, why don't we have discussions about why a lot of people in the UK don't see most of the women in the world necessarily as even fully human in reality?
Well, Ellie, Femi makes a number of points there, but the point about how acting and singing isn't gender specific. So what's the problem with having an open category
I think
for
it
everyone?
is gender specific though, because if you look at if we take it to the UK music industry, which is what we're discussing here, and you look at how men are represented, and it is a visual art as well as an audible art now because of how we have music videos, we have live performances. Women are very much more judged on their appearance, their sexuality, and so they have more to contend with to get to the point where they're able to even be nominated for these awards, where they'll be able to release music on a huge scale and get these massive distribution deals. You look at likes of like Ed Sheeran, and you look at Lewis Capaldi. No one's saying to them, lose weight, put makeup on, have your hair done differently, wear a shorter skirt. They're things that women have to deal with every day. And on top of that, behind the scenes, women have to deal with the sexual harassment and abuse that they deal with in the music industry. 34% of women in the music industry have been sexually harassed or abused at work. So you're overcoming that. So yes, at the end of the day, you might be singing and dancing on stage and doing what you do, but to get to that point is so much harder for women to do. Even Ray herself, she's openly said that she was sexually assaulted by a male producer when she was 17. So how many men come out and say that they've been sexually abused by women in the music industry? It doesn't happen. So the end result is too simplistic to say, oh, you're just singing a song, you're just dancing on stage, you're just acting. It's what it takes to get to that point. Women are pushed out from the beginning, so creating that safe space for them, that recognition is still very important.
Okay, all right. Femi, what about this idea that one of the reasons why we had these gender-neutral categories was to pander to people like Sam Smith, who I think has made a bit of a performance of himself, as it were. He was last seen, as I'm looking at on my screen now, parading around wearing a nappy and dressed as some kind of Braveheart-esque tribesman. This was his last year's outfit of him, dressed like that. I mean, Femi, is this not one of the main motivations why we had a gender-neutral category? Because we wanted to pander to this?
Well, just to respond to the previous point, I totally agree that women have it harder to make it in the music industry, in any industry. I also agree that black people have it harder. I also agree that Muslims have it harder. So should we have awards? I mean, because what you're basically saying is you're presenting an argument for the idea of quotas and positive discrimination.
Do we not already have that with the MOBO Awards, though, Femi?
No, but what I'm saying is within the Brits Award, because the Brits Award is supposed to be British, and it's one award show of a few different award shows, and there are also award shows which are specifically for women. I'm saying that if you're making the argument that disadvantaged groups, because they're disadvantaged and they have it hard, they have a harder time making it in a certain industry, they should be able to have a certain amount. Then the same applies to minorities, and I'm sure a lot of the people who would accept the argument from you on that regard wouldn't necessarily accept the argument that there should be a quota of black artists.
But Femi, just on that point about Sam Smith, because he came out as non-binary, and then that seemed to put a lot of pressure on the Brit Awards to completely scrap their gender categories, just because one man said he didn't fit into either category. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it, especially not for just one person who's clearly an attention seeker.
Well, again, I don't think Sam Smith is the only person who is, and again, you could have an award that like, this is the thing, the whole idea of award ceremonies, the whole idea of a few people at the top of the music industry and producers and their mates saying, okay, well, this year this person's getting this year this person's getting that, and there's no kind of actual necessarily voting process. It's all just people deciding, and it's all kind of fluffy anyway. It's like it's all part of this distraction, which is meant to have us having here on national news having discussions about Sam Smith and what he's wearing and the Brit Awards instead of the actual issues which are to do with gender in this country, which are things like the reproductive rights, which are things like access to medical care, which are things which relate to what this government is doing and how this government, and which are things like blowing up women on the other side of the world and running over them with jeeps. These are real issues. This is all just fluffy and great. Cool. Sam Smith is wearing a nappy. He's doing this. He's doing that. Cool. But at the end of the day, there are non-binary people in the UK.
It does prompt discussions, though. It does prompt discussions, though. Femi, Ellie, just last word to you, Ellie, on this.
Last word would be this was about categories being taken away, and I actually think I agree with what you say in terms of representation of black artists, especially black women. There are more categories now of different genres which generally are taken up by minority artists, and I think that's a good thing. When it comes to the gender neutral, the non-binary, I think that again there could have been another category, just Artist of the Year. Why do you need to take away from what's there that's representing as it is? Yeah. I think if anything, build on that and make it better representative. So yeah, that's mine.
Well, there we go. There's the solution.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed that, actually. Take care and look after yourselves. All
Ellie
right.
Phillips and Femi Nylander there. Well, still to come. The man is back, isn't he? The man is Aidan McGee. He's going to go through all of the very latest sports news with us. Go on.
Well, just saying, we've got loads of great emails in about this Brit Awards thing, actually. So should we do that?
Go on, read one out.
Well, just saying, if you're good, you will be successful. That should be the only metric, says Ian there on this. A lot of people pushing back, especially women, actually, pushing back against the gender-neutral categories. The fear that it is going to end up with just a load of blokes winning.
What's wrong with having men and women categories? It was never broken. We don't need to fix it. Anyway, we'll go through some more of your views because there's lots coming through after this quick break.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners, and Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do. If
or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it, rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, well, we just had that debate on gendered categories at the Brit Awards. They've got rid of them. And so last year there was an uproar because no women got the Best Artist or Best Album or whatever it was. And now this year there are more women getting the awards. But why do they need to scrap gendered categories?
Well, loads of you have been getting in touch. Alan says no one is ever happy with this. They complain about gender categories and change it. They complain about too many men winning awards. This isn't gender equality, it's anti-men, says Alan.
Sandra says...
I don't disagree, Alan. I don't disagree. Sandra says, what a load of tosh this nonsense is. Male and female categories only. Do you know what? Something that Ellie said did stick with me. Less than 20% of people who are signed up to the industry are women. So that is a huge domination by men, and there doesn't seem to be any good reason for that. Or would you just say they're better? No, I don't really know what the answer is. I mean, look, I don't know whether or not there are certain biological issues when it comes to this, you know, touring, relentlessly touring, the nature of the music
Absolutely not. Look at Taylor Swift. She did, like, a 5-hour concert in the pouring rain.
OK, before there's a Swiftie over here. All I was saying was, maybe if Taylor was desperate to start a family or something like that.
Oh, yes,
maybe that would mean that it would be more difficult for her. That's all I'm saying, because there's a similar argument about why there are so few women in stand-up comedy as well. No emails about that, please. Christopher says, hi, Patrick. What do people keep banging on about gender neutral? You are either male or female. This is spoiling the awards anyway. So that's the general flavour of the inbox there.
That is the flavour of the inbox. Keep your views coming in on anything and everything. But it's time to go through the sports with broadcaster Aidan McGee.
Good to see you both.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm just still thinking about Alan.
Aidan, you want to talk about QPR?
Oh, yeah, this is more of a footnote,
Go on,
really.
sell it to us.
All right, well, this is great, because last week we covered it extensively. It was former England player Stan Bowles and a QPR legend, number 10, and everything else. He number 10 was a shirty boy. He wasn't the Prime Minister. He died after a battle with Alzheimer's at the age of 75. QPR go to Leicester yesterday in the Championship. Leicester are far out in front. QPR have got no right to be on the same pitch as them, even given the resources, the respective resources between the two sides. QPR win 2-1. QPR at the bottom of the table, Leicester at the top. Extraordinary win. First goal scored by the number 10. And before the match, and we've got the picture, and I think as well, when QPR fans are singing Stanley in Hail their former hero, a rainbow appears above the away end, which you can see there.
It had it all then, didn't it?
It did. Manchester local as well, Stan Bowles. Maybe that's what the charisma was about, you know.
Well, maybe.
But brilliant win for QPR yesterday. Shakes things up at the top of the Championship. I still expect Leicester to go back to the Premier League, though.
Yes, well, but a massive
You would think
club,
so.
massive
Yeah, they are,
club.
yeah, exactly.
And they sold Harry Maguire to Manchester United for, was it 80 million?
80 million, yeah, that's a bargain.
And then used it to build an entire new training complex.
Yes, they did. It was fantastic, yeah.
So, on that note, it's the Manchester Derby today, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. Are you looking forward to it?
No.
I got that impression. No, listen, it's going to be very difficult for Man United, of course. I just worry for Erik ten Hag, because I think that they could really have done with winning that league game last week against Fulham, because it's better to go into that match against City with a little bit of credit in the bank. They've done well since New Year, but losing that game, I know they won in the week against Nottingham Forest, but Sir Jim Ratcliffe has not mucked around since he went into United and he took over the minority share. He has had some encouraging noises from the council about extending and improving Old Trafford. He's brought in a new CEO. He's moving and shaking. He's not messing around. He's taking control of the sporting responsibility at United. He was given many opportunities last week, Patrick, to back Erik ten Hag, and he didn't seem to take them. He didn't seem very forthcoming. Normally, if you're happy with the person you've got in charge, you say so. And he didn't.
And you think it's going to be 3-1 to City this time around, which would be an improvement on last time, 3-0.
3-0. Yeah, that was Old Trafford last season. I think it was 6-3, wasn't it? to Manchester City.
Could it be Erik ten Hag's last game then? Do you think?
I think possibly. Yeah. If they get a real hammering. And, you know, City are in form. Don't forget, City are going to have the ball 35 yards from your goal. They're going to be in possession all the time. United are pretty good in the counter-attack. They've not got a bad record at Man City, actually, in the last few years. They tend to do better in the away leg than the home one, but we'll see.
Never forget that Paul Scholes winner at the end there. Anyway,
all right. I was there.
Were you?
I was indeed.
Lucky lad. Anyway, thank you very much, Aidan McGee there. Now, we've got loads still to come, haven't we?
Yes, it's making the news with Georgie Frost and Emma Wolf. This is going to be good. We're going to return to some of the front pages and what's inside the covers of the papers this morning. This is Breakfast on GB News with Patrick and me, Emily.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, very good morning, everybody. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with me, Patrick and Emily.
You are indeed. So let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages and what's inside them.
Well, the Times reports on Jeremy Hunt's struggle to secure funds for a 2p personal tax cut in the budget, which is a bit of a snooze fest, if you ask me.
The Telegraph leads on Hunt's plans to combat excess civil servants in the upcoming budget. A bit of a war on woke, apparently.
Well, the Observer is, shock horror, telling him that, oh, gosh, it would be absolutely awful if you dared to cut tax. Thank you, Observer.
Well, the top economists are saying that at least. The Mirror leads with Prince Andrew facing new questions as secret papers are set to be released.
Yeah, and we go over to the Sun now saying the royals are in crisis and Queen Camilla is on holiday, or is going on holiday anyway, so yes.
And the Daily Star leads with Meghan, the mayorholic, who gets through 3 big bottles of mayonnaise per week.
Great.
3 bottles. You get through that many of garlic and herb.
Yes, I do. It's a good job it's not smell-o-vision, isn't it, really? But, OK, we're going to go in now with Emma on, apparently, an NHS questionnaire that has got you going.
So this is a new digital questionnaire that patients are being faced with at A&E when they arrive, right? It's an iPad-style thing where you have to press the screen, endlessly. Urgent care self-service. So it's a check-in screen. Wait, if you turn up and you're bleeding heavily, if you turn up and you're struggling to breathe, if you turn up and you're suicidal or seriously ill or just very, very stressed, you are going to have to go through 14 pages, 14 screens of multiple choice questions. You know, like when you check in at the GP and all of that. And there are questions like, are you spurting blood, spraying, or enough to make a puddle?
Enough to make a puddle?
This is 14... This is 14 screens in, right? Have you got rapid swelling? Are you struggling to breathe? Are you here because you've tried to end your life?
Oh, my gosh.
So there's a lot of concern. I mean, it's funny, but it's also shocking. There are a lot of concerns that elderly people won't be able to do a digital questionnaire.
Yeah.
People who turn up at A&E will be very stressed. They may be very ill, genuinely ill. This is absolutely, you know, not what patients need.
But to be generous
they need
to
to
the
be assessed.
To be generous to the NHS, though, is this just a smarter way of triaging?
No.
At A&E?
Absolutely not. There's a great quote here in the Mail on Sunday. A member of the non-medical reception staff said, since they arrived a couple of weeks ago, we've been told to send people to the iPads, even if they're obviously bleeding. We've had people bleeding on the floor down there and all sorts.
Oh, my
I mean, for goodness sake. And if you have an issue with you've attempted suicide, there's even more questions that you need to fill out. This is ridiculous.
You don't turn up at A&E unless you think, and often it's not an emergency, but unless you think you need urgent help. There are going to be so many people who can't cope with this, and elderly people and little people and whatever.
But
it's not the place for it.
There are a lot of people who turn up in A&E simply because they can't see their GP.
They're drunk. Good luck with the iPad screens when you're drunk.
Well, that's true. That's true. Now, can I just whiz us down a bit further than expected, Georgie, if that's all right, and just talk about this Brits balanced diet of foie gras and Greggs, apparently. We are...
Yeah, I don't know if I'm thinking a bit too much about this, to be fair, which actually probably isn't a surprise with me. But look, I mean, foie gras and Greggs are both doing great guns, I suppose. We're buying it. But to me, it sort of sums up the cost of living issue that we've been covering over the last few years. I'm a financial journalist, and whenever people talk about cost of living crisis, I always have to say, for many people, it is not a crisis. It's a bit of an inconvenience. Things may be a bit more expensive, you know, but by and large, if you don't have a mortgage, if your energy bill's quite cheap, you've probably escaped this quite nicely. And I go around wherever I live, in cost of living crisis, where? So this, to me, but there are people who are suffering very, very badly. So this, to me, sort of shows the sort of two Britons that we're getting at the moment.
Really good
foie gras. Did I think too much about that?
No, I like,
all right,
I like that analysis there because...
but everyone likes Greggs,
I thought foie gras was banned because of animal welfare.
Yes, I mean, there is also that.
I thought you could only get pate these days.
There's a few welfare concerns as well, which I probably should have thought about first. But as a financial journalist, I went with the economics.
No, you're right.
I preferred your analysis. I just wanted to get that in there.
Should we keep it kind of food-related as well? Because there's someone who's saying they're addicted to mayonnaise on the front of the Daily Star.
It's absolutely brilliant. Classic Star headline. You know, the world is going to hell in a handcart and they've got mayo. Meghan, the mayo addict. I'm mayo addicted or whatever. Anyway, this Meghan, well, she gets through 3 huge tubs, the sort of jar tubs, you know, the plastic ones, of mayo a week. 3 isn't that many, but anyway, they're pretty big. But she puts it on everything. She's totally addicted. She carries sachets and jars with her as a backup.
Oh, no, she puts it in her porridge.
She puts it on her porridge. I don't like mayo. I don't really know what you do with it, but I know that porridge is not for mayonnaise.
OK, well, I love mayonnaise, but certainly not on my porridge. So she must be an addict if she's putting it on her porridge.
Can't look at it.
I mean, her partner knows about it. Her friends give her mayo for birthdays.
If this all it takes to get on the front cover of a newspaper, then, I mean... It's not hard nowadays, is it?
Put me on the front of the Star.
There
we go. All right, OK, well, look, thank you very much. Another rip-roaring hour. We are going to be back very, very shortly. We're going to be talking to Camilla Tominey, the best in the biz, for what she's got coming up on her show. Spoiler alert, it's great.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon, but for many it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, from 9:30 on Sunday morning when I'll be speaking to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, ahead of next Wednesday's budget. Will taxes come down, and what will it mean for your finances? I'll also be joined by Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson to discuss Labour's school plans, and former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick will be telling me what the government should really be doing to tackle Islamic extremism. I'll also be speaking to Donald Trump's former chief spokesman Jason Miller, live from Washington, D.C. All that and more with me, Camilla Tominey.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the king was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family.
Absolutely.
Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the king is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of March.
This is Breakfast with me, Patrick Christys, and Emily Carver.
Yes, now, just a day after the Prime Minister's threat to democracy warning, pro-Palestinian protests have taken to the streets again as senior MPs raise the alarm over rising extremism.
Well, and so they should, but Jeremy Hunt is set to go to war on woke Whitehall waste as he continues to tease the prospect of tax cuts in Wednesday's budget.
Yes, and a record-breaking Brit Awards it was. Singer Ray took 6 gongs and Kylie Minogue is crowned global icon. But we'll be debating this hour. Well, we won't. We have already debated it, but coming up too.
After holding the fort over the past weeks, Queen Camilla is set to take a little break. Where will she be going on holiday? Who will be leading the royals?
There's a frosty, foggy start in places this morning, but it should brighten up. Plenty of sunny spells across the country. Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
Well, only a day after the Prime Minister called on organisers not to let extremists hijack protests. Thousands again took part in those pro-Palestine protests across the country. The police, however, did make 12 arrests this time, and that was for people failing to follow a dispersal order, apparently.
Yes, and it also comes today as there are further warnings over extremism in the UK. The Daily Mail is reporting Britain's terror threat is at the highest level since 9/11.
Yeah, there's a few extremism-related stories around today because former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has said that there is a cosy relationship now between the left and Islamists.
Yes, I think he used the word unholy alliance.
Yeah, he's also said as well that there are stronger laws against football fans than extremists wanting jihad, which I think is quite interesting. Well, you know, right on brand, coming up at 9:30 is the Camilla Tominay Show, and I believe, joining us now, it's Camilla herself. Ah, very good. Camilla, great stuff. Thank you very much. Now, I must say, you have an absolutely stellar lineup today, including, I believe, the man I was just talking about there, Robert Jenrick, who is getting stuck into the extremists, is he?
Yeah, we've got such a good show this morning. I say that with no surprise because it's always good every week, as you both know. But yes, Robert Jenrick's going to come in and explain to us that Mail on Sunday op-ed. I mean, his positioning on all this is really interesting because it wasn't that long ago that he was sort of regarded as somebody who was just a minister but pretty unremarkable. And then he's now sort of, I think, not so much on manoeuvres as positioning himself as somebody quite tough on the right, not least on this subject of Islamic extremism. Now, we know about the Lee Anderson row. We know how everything's played out in the week. I thought the timing of the Prime Minister's intervention was really interesting on Friday night, coming quite late in the week and taking us all by surprise. At one point, we were thinking, is he going to start announcing a May election? He didn't. He gave that speech. But I suppose my reaction to that, and I'm going to ask Jenrick about this, is the government just kind of like providing a running commentary on what's going on rather than any actual solutions? As you said there, Patrick, you know, the marches continue. Yes, there were 12 arrests. James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, has said, you know, you've made your point now, you shouldn't be marching at all. While I very much support the right to peaceful protest, this idea of people being surrounded in their homes, MPs not being able to leave their offices, the interventions that Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, made in the House, the situation's got out of control. Rishi Sunak was addressing that. But what action are they going to take? What measures are they going to put in place to stop this?
That's a very good point you make about how they're providing a running commentary of events and not necessarily making the policy changes that are needed. Although I see in the Telegraph they're talking about cracking down on hate preachers. I guess a lot of us would ask, why is this not already happening?
Yeah, why are they here in the first place?
Yeah, right. I read that story thinking, yeah, why are they even allowed in? I mean, I think Robert Jenrick wants to talk about the prevent strategy as well. He thinks that that's kind of turning a blind eye to forms of extremism. He also wants to talk about the term Islamophobia and whether that's being used sort of to stop people from properly scrutinising Islamic extremism for fear of appearing racist. We know that's a problem. The other big guest, of course, I've got on the show today is none other than the Chancellor himself, Jeremy Hunt, going to try and extract from him what he plans to put in Wednesday's budget. Probably won't tell me because Chancellors never do. But of course, the pressure's on him to cut taxes. And let's be honest, it's a make or break budget, isn't it?
Well, it is a make-or-break budget, and I think the polarisation of it is actually laid bare by the front pages today. We've got The Observer, tax cuts will backfire, top economist warn Hunt. The Sunday Times, Chancellor in last-ditch fight to cut tax by 2p. So it's kind of who's he going to listen to, really, isn't it, when it comes to this? What kind of stuff are you going to be going at him for? He's also said as well, hasn't he, that he wants to go to war on woke Whitehall.
Well, I mean, that's great, but how many times have we heard about the government going to war on woke Whitehall? I mean, why has Whitehall become so inflated? Yes, it became inflated under Brown, but it's not as if the Tories have done much to stop it. So I might challenge him on that and say, you keep on coming out with these policies to reverse what has happened on your watch. I'm also going to be asking him about the OBR. The OBR was set up to try and make checks and balances on Gordon Brown's budgets, but now it seems to be informing what the Chancellor puts in the budget. Well, should we be relying on the OBR when they seem to predict everything incorrectly? How many of their forecasts have turned out to be complete nonsense? Why is the Treasury sort of beholden to the OBR?
Yeah.
Yes, he does appear to be Mr. Sensible, but is it time, you know, with the general election not too far away, probably, to just come out with some bold policies, you know, take a bit of a risk when it comes to tax policy, maybe, although I'm not sure Jeremy Hunt is that type of man, is he? But you've also got Bridget Phillipson on, don't you? Shadow Secretary of State for Education. What do you think she's going to be saying?
Well, I think she's going to have a go at the Tories on their childcare plans and say that they're not fit for purpose. I will, of course, then be asking, well, what's Labour's plan for childcare? If we can extract from Bridget Phillipson what she thinks Labour will do about tax and spend, that will be a victory, because they know what they don't want, but they won't tell us what they do. And I'm also going to be questioning her again about private schools and this VAT on school fees, because I can't seem to elicit an answer from anyone on Labour as to what happens to those kids whose parents can't afford the fees if Labour get into power. So that could be up to 40,000 private school children that need public school places. How are they going to find them?
Yeah.
Yes, I was also reading that it's becoming increasingly hard for people to get their first choice of secondary school. Will this make it worse?
Yeah, probably. Well, look, we will all be watching, as we do every single Sunday, Camilla. It's a fantastic show. I think we've taken up enough of your time. You've got to go and do your last-minute prep and go grill some politicians, do what you do best, all right? So make sure that you stay tuned for Camilla Tominey, 9:30 until... it's an hour and a half, isn't it, the show? Great stuff.
That's going to be a brilliant show, that is. But after taking...
Well, I was just going to say quickly, I think that there's a heck of a lot to go out today on that. You know, to have, as well, the two men of the moment, right, which is Robert Jenrick on his immigration stuff and the Islamist side of things and the hate preachers thing, and the Chancellor, who is splashed right across the front of pretty much every single major national newspaper. You know, her going at both of those individuals, I think, is going to be a very, very key point. Yeah, Jeremy Hunt, I just wonder, you know, he's completely uninspiring as far as I'm concerned. He's just a guy who just doesn't seem to have any kind of vigour or...
What do you call him? You call him Jeremy from Accounts.
Jeremy from Accounts, which, all right, people now will be shouting at the TV screen and going, well, it's the Chancellor, I want someone called Jeremy from Accounts. My problem is he's never flipping worked in accounts before, actually, is the issue. He just looks like the kind of guy that should.
You've assessed his CV.
Yeah.
And you believe that it doesn't warrant the position of Chancellor.
He just strikes me as the kind of guy, and I've got, you know, believe it or not, I've been called into HR at numerous different workplaces several times, right?
I don't think you should admit that.
He strikes me as the kind of guy who would happily come in and clinically sack you, you know, and have a very wet handshake.
No, I think he'd make someone else do it.
Do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he'd do that dirty work, but anyway. But Jeremy Hunt, yes, he has some big decisions to make. I'm not sure a couple of headlines about cutting woke Whitehall waste is gonna cut it. Would a 2p tax cut get you to vote for the Conservatives? Is it enough?
No, it's not.
Is it enough?
So, I don't think so. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see what he says on Camilla's show, won't we? But after taking the reign, following the King's recent cancer diagnosis, Queen Camilla is set to take a break, heading somewhere sunny, apparently.
Yes, it comes as online rumours continue to swell around the Princess of Wales, who is still on leave following surgery earlier last month.
Joining us now is royal expert and journalist Pandora Forsyth. Pandora, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. So, Queen Camilla, first of all, foremost, do we think she deserves a break?
Yeah, look, she's been working really, really hard, hasn't she, with the king and her husband, while still looking after him in the background, bear in mind. It's not a long break by any means. It's a few days, but this comes at a time where the royal family is being looked at under a microscope and people are calling for, well, Charles wanted a slim down monarchy. He's got what he's wanted, and now they all sort of seem to be falling off working duties, and people are turning around and saying, well, what's the plan now? Camilla's going to be out for a few days. Catherine's not going to be back until after Easter. We had a last-minute pull-out from William only a few days ago as well, so it's really not coming at the right time. But no, I do think she deserves a break, it has to be said. She has been working very, very hard, and unexpectedly hard, I imagine, to be honest. And look, she's in her 70s, so, give her a few days.
Yes, most people would be retired by her age. Any idea who she's going with, where she might be going?
I imagine she's going to be spending time with her dogs, to be honest, and with her friends, and just going for a few days of rest. I can't imagine she's going to be going overseas or anything like that. She'll want to be very much by the king's side and giving him emotional support more than anything through quite a tough time.
Oh, I thought she was going to go off to a sunny climate, not Ayia Napa.
Ayia Napa, get her
Ayia
a Napa.
Now that would be great, wouldn't it?
Queen Camilla.
A cocktail bowl. What do you call them? Fish bowls.
Absolutely. What you'd soon forget life's problems if you were seen around Ayia Napa. Did she actually need to tell us about all this, though? Seriously, I mean, is there a slight issue maybe with the royal family actually oversharing at the moment? We've had the King's cancer diagnosis. We've got whatever the heck is happening with Kate at the moment. We've had the personal reasons issue that Prince William was missing the memorial service for King Constantine II, and now we're being told that Camilla's taking a holiday. I mean, realistically, if she had just disappeared for a few days, would anyone have really noticed? Do we need to know?
I think in normal times they wouldn't have noticed, but I think because so many people are missing from the royal roster at the moment, I think that's why they do need to kind of give a bit of detail. But you say that, but also people are saying they're not sharing enough detail. They want to know why Catherine isn't coming back until after Easter. They want to know why William pulled out last minute the other day. So they can't do right from wrong at the moment. They're either sharing too much or sharing too little. From their perspective, a household's perspective, if you're working in comms, it's probably your worst nightmare.
This is why the late Queen got it right, in my view, giving very little away, because once you give a little bit, it doesn't end the speculation, it fuels more speculation, speculation on top of speculation on top of speculation, and then, it's difficult to know what more to reveal.
You're totally right. I mean, it's speculation non-stop at the moment. And of course, they're not giving anything away. From the perspective of never complain, never explain, that's obviously the right way of doing things. But then the king also wants to become across more emotional, more open. He realises that people do now need that in terms of getting the younger generations talking. But it's just so difficult for them at the moment because it's just, it's not going in their favour. Camilla's really trying to make all of the events and really trying to commit to everything that she can. But, with William pulling out last minute, Catherine down obviously for personal reasons and totally understandable. It's just not ideal at the moment, but they are trying. They are trying.
They are. Look, it's also worth noting, I think, Pandora, that I think it was Thursday, it might have been Friday morning, actually.
Yeah.
Kensington Palace put out a statement essentially saying, look, we've told you that Kate's ill, right? And we've told you that there's going to be a period of recovery. Can we stop this speculation? Now, there's been, in the void of what was actually really wrong with her, has sprung up a load of really bizarre conspiracy theories online. Obviously, some of them, not particularly nice at all. The problem, I think, that they've got, though, is that they did say to us she's gone in for something that clearly was very serious, And then we haven't really heard anything since. And I believe that the kind of initial expected recovery time has now elapsed and is, you know, we're beyond that grey zone of recovery, as it were, there, really. So they've backed themselves into a corner now, haven't they? People are going to speculate.
Yeah, people are going to speculate, and I think they did expect that. What they have to realise now, we live in a social media world, which is great for them because their whole strategy has changed in terms of getting their message out to people, perhaps, who wouldn't be picking up the paper and really trying to engage younger audiences. I mean, I have to say, people think I'm sort of giving a bit of PR for them right now, which I'm absolutely not. I'm trying to be fair and balanced here. But their social media does look amazing, and it looks so polished, and they're really sort of pushing out the messages that they need to. But also, on the same note, you know, they did say they're not going to be giving a running commentary, which you have just said. But with social media, you know, people have got freedom of expression. People can say what they like, and sometimes it's very, very negative. But also, it allows a conversation to happen between people, and then it just feeds and feeds and feeds because social algorithms work off conversations. And when you get, you know, quite negative conversations, unfortunately, they appear more on your feed, and people get more involved in it. And this is when the rumours really try and sort of amp up.
It's true. William has been doing his best to take his mind off things a little bit, though, I think, hasn't he? I believe we might be able to show a little bit of a clip now of William getting quite stuck in and down a pub. Here we go. So, look, Will's... all of a sudden, the shots are coming out. By the way, this was on St David's Day, I believe. This wasn't that late in the day. This was at about midday, 1 o'clock.
Are you worried about him?
Well, no. But he's got, you know, I'm worried about the state of that pint that the guy's drinking on the left there. That's shocking. But William getting on the shots early doors, you know, he's got quite a lot that he needs to sort out at the moment, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, he does. And look, this is from a David's Day perspective. Obviously, Catherine wasn't there, and all day, bless him, he was getting flowers, he was getting a gift for the children and messages to send back to Catherine. I'm sure, you know, he sort of wants to turn around and say, you know, she's absolutely fine, which is what the households are saying. And he is getting on with things as usual, as much as he can, whilst also supporting his wife and children back at home. But I think we've realised, you know, in the past few weeks, just how much they work as a team together. And how much actually he does really need her in these times, and without her, you know, the sparkle unfortunately isn't there as much. And I think perhaps it's a good lesson for them both in terms of having that sort of team bonding. And I'm sure she'll come back and she'll be on the front of every single newspaper going. Well, virtually nearly everyone. Let's be honest. But yeah, no. So I'm sure he has realised that he needs her, which is nice, isn't it? And then hopefully he'll not get as many questions about her the whole time.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Pandora Forsyth, who is, of course, a royal expert and journalist. Great to speak to you. Just let the man have a shot, Patrick.
Oh, no, hey, I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, have at it. But no, I just thought it was quite nice for him to get away and just see. I reckon it probably tasted quite good for him after he'd had, you know, a terrible time of it. Your father, unfortunately, has got the cancer diagnosis. Obviously, his wife's ill. His brother's still, you know, Harry. And then, you know...
It must be so stressful seeing all of the speculation everywhere on social media and not being able to say anything about it.
If you get
not
used
being
to
able to really put yourself... I guess you just live in such a sort of rarefied existence that you can kind of ignore it, maybe.
I wonder if you do get used to it, you know, growing up.
Well, you've got used to the mean comments about you, haven't you?
Yeah, but they mostly come from you, so there we go. All right, still to come. Ray breaks records at the Brit Awards, and Kylie Minogue is crowned global icon. We'll be looking at all the glitz and glamour of last night's Brit Awards and some very, very dodgy outfits. That's
Racy.
Next.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with me, Patrick and Emily.
Yes, well, it's British music's Night of Nights. The 2024 Brit Music Awards took place last night. It was singer-songwriter Ray who broke records and took home 6 awards.
You just don't understand what this means to me. Ugly crying on national television. I'm so proud of this album. I'm so proud of this album. I'm in love with music. All I ever wanted to be was an artist. And now I'm an artist with an album of the year!
I'm so proud of this show. I'm so proud of it. I've never done a show like this before. I'm with someone else's award, but it means the world. Anyway, well done, Ray. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Here to join us is our showbiz reporter, Stephanie.
Such a meanie.
Stephanie, thank you very much.
Oh, my gosh.
There you go. Well done.
Going
well done.
this morning. Indeed. Well, we are talking about awards and how important they are. And in some way, they are losing away in terms of how women are represented, men are represented. But I do think it's still important to be recognised by your industry peers. And that's what happened for Ray last night. She's been on a battle, some would say. You know, she parted ways with her label Polydor 3 years ago, and it's unheard for someone to part ways with their record label and then bounce back the way she has. You know, she came out with her album 21st Century Blues, and it's very poignant, it's very hard-hitting. There's something about her that reminds me about Amy Winehouse. You know, a lot of music these days, you press play and you want to turn it off, but her, she's got real depth, hence the 6 Brit Awards.
Well, I absolutely love Amy Winehouse. house, so I'm going to have to listen
like
to it. I'm
her
sure I've heard her songs, you know, I'm
You
just
probably
rubbish at
have.
putting the name
I
with
like
the
her style.
artist.
I do
Yeah,
like her style.
She has. You know, when I was reading some of the fashion critics, they were like, oh, you know, she's dressed a bit too older for her age and stuff. But, you know, she's been through a lot in the industry. You know, one of her tracks, Ice Cream Man, she talks about the sexual assault she went through in the industry. And it's people like that do deserve a stage like this to talk about their music and be credited for it as well. But also, it was a big night for Kylie Minogue. She got Global Icon Award, and she is an icon, you know. Kylie is one of those artists who can keep on reinventing herself.
She's got her own rosé brand.
She does. Oh, my gosh, I've tasted it. It's quite nice, actually. But she closed out the show yesterday performing a melody of her hits, and I'm just hoping that Kylie's here for another 20, 30 years, still providing good music.
Well, I hope that you're still here for another 20 or 30 years.
God, I don't know
diligently
about
doing
that.
the showbiz
I
section
don't know about that.
on GB News Breakfast.
I might move into politics.
Exclusive.
You heard it first. You heard
Well,
it
you
first.
certainly couldn't do a worse job than half of them, so there you go. All backing behind you. Backing behind you.
Well, thank you very, very much, Stephanie, for being amazing this morning, and thank you to absolutely everybody.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody. Yeah, that award actually is not for us. That was, of course, GB News Breakfast when we weren't presenting it. So well done, everybody. But look, that's it from us, isn't it? Thank you very much for being a wonderful co-host today.
And you were all right too.
Thank you. Up next, it is Camilla Tominey, and she's got Robert Jenrick, former Immigration Minister, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, and Labour's shadow
Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. It's going to be a banger.
See you in a bit.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's quite chilly out there this morning. Some dense fog patches around too, some icy surfaces after temperatures below freezing across many parts. The fog will slowly lift and break this morning, and then there'll be a dry day for many. Plenty of sunny spells, brighter than Saturday, though this weather front will bring some cloud and outbreaks of rain along the east coast at times, so do be aware of this. Further west as well, a few showers will develop by the afternoon. But for many, it will be dry, some bright spells, and temperatures, well, just a little higher than Saturday, 7 to 9 Celsius, and with a bit more sunshine around, it will just feel a little warmer too. Into the evening time, many showers start to fade away or become more confined to coastal areas, and then clear skies for many, though this frontal system will continue to affect the far northeast of Scotland. Under clear skies and light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing as temperatures fall close to, if not below freezing, but temperatures rising towards the end of the night towards the very far southwest as the next weather system moves in, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain through Monday morning across the southwest of the UK. Elsewhere, a cold, frosty start, but then plenty of sunshine to come through the day, though this turning increasingly hazy as we move through into the afternoon. Best of the sunshine holding on across Scotland, though the Northern Isles seeing further spells of rain, mild air and brisk winds coming into the southwest.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers.